2. Hello. First. How's it going, folks? I'm back. It's me again. Yeah, you got rid of me that easy, huh? You thought you were rid of me? You thought I was gone forever, right? After I left yesterday? Well, guess what, asshole? I'm back. That's not how it's gonna work. You're stuck with me, unfortunately. Unfortunately for you. You're stuck with me. What is this clip? Cellular arrest. I don't know if I trust clicking that. I don't know if I trust clicking this. I don't know what this is. Oh, is that me promising that I would be there by 12? Yeah. Oh, shit. Sorry, cellular arrest. It's your relatively new 4 messages. 4 messages in the channel. So I don't know if sometimes I don't know what people's motivations are. Are you messing with me? Are you here to mess with me? Huh? You're one of the haters and losers? Is that it? Is that what's going on? No, but I should be accountable. We're all here to mess with me. I should be accountable. What I should... The first part, yes. Okay, that's good. Frankly, I should be here at noon. You know, I don't know what the fucking deal is. You know, I did go out and do a few things this morning and I had a bit of work. Really, realistically, I could have done it. Realistically, I could have done it. I could have made it by noon and I just failed. I just didn't do it. I don't know. That's why starting next week, it's going to be starting at a normal time. It's going to be starting at the agreed upon time. Starting next week. This time for real, though. This time for real. For realsies. Well, Dutch, a couple things is that I'm not signed into Instagram on my browser, so it's hard for me to access that content when I'm here. And also just Instagram content sometimes just looks bad when you're trying to show it on here. This is my concern. Flip it and ship it. This time I mean it, okay? I know I've made a lot of promises over the years. Not all of them have been kept, okay? I'm the first person to admit that. I will cop to that. This time I mean it, though, alright? This time I mean it. See, I'm wearing my streaming sleeve like Allen Iverson. I'm wearing my streaming sleeve. That's how you know it's serious now. That's how you know I'm really serious. I'm having some more issues with swelling in my elbow, and I'm trying to keep that under control. Because my decaying meat prison is just, that's it. It's decaying. It's a meat prison, and it's decaying. It's decaying rapidly. It's unfortunate. I got all kinds of issues here. Maybe we should be taking care of it a little better. Well, don't you tell me what to do, sir. Even if you are a doctor, Dr. Awesome, doesn't mean you get to tell me what to do all of a sudden with my fucked up body. Which with a small amount of upkeep would probably be in much better condition. Whatever, we don't need to go down that road right now. I'm mostly fine. I'm mostly okay. How's everyone else doing?
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Gwynny, thank you for gifting a sub. I really appreciate that. Thank you, Gwynny. Yesterday was, and this whole week actually has been kind of a slog. I'm hoping to finish this week strong. We're going to finish this week strong. It's all good. It's just a Fred Durst Loserville tour vid with a weirdo Corey Feldman bit. Well, it does sound interesting. I'm definitely going to check that out later. I only say because it's helped my physical and mental health to move around a bit. Yeah, like I walk quite a lot, but it's clearly not enough. And I don't think a lot for me is like a lot. No, I don't doubt it, actually. I don't doubt it. The problem for me also is just that like it becomes this self-reinforcing thing because like I get issues in my feet, in my ankles, and my knees that prevent me from walking that much sometimes. And then I don't walk, and then I develop problems by not moving my body enough. And it becomes this like self-fulfilling prophecy kind of thing. Endless cycle of deterioration and pain, pretty much. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. You're not going to want to hear this, but yoga. Well, like I said, Gwynny, when I was having pain in my back and my neck, yoga really did help. I feel I have pain in my feet and my knees and stuff that yoga is not going to help me with. This is the problem. Like, it's not like muscle pain. It's like deep interior fucked up internal stuff. It's all attached. Well, maybe you're probably right. I'm just making excuses. I'm just obviously just making excuses. Thank you for holding me accountable, everyone, when it comes to either the stream's start time or me not taking my physical health seriously. Thank you. I appreciate that you are... Well, some of you are looking out for me, but... I heard you know ball. I'd like to think I know a little ball.
On me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
I know a little ball. I know a little hoops. Perfect Speller, thanks for the 9 months. I watched most of the game, but I was getting kind of sleepy, and it was not... I was just annoyed that the Celtics were playing really well, so I just turned it off. Went to bed pretty early last night. Yeah, I saw Halliburton's hurt. Like, who knows if he'll come back. You can't let that game one slip away. Like, you just can't. You can't do that. They had that game absolutely locked up, and they just gave it right back. You can't, if you want to have any hope to win that series, you can't be doing that. The healthy Knicks would have been fun to watch. Here's my question, though. If the Celtics, let's say the Celtics do win this title, which I don't think they will. I don't think they're going to win the title. I'm going to say that right now. It's probably going to be whoever comes out of the West, in my opinion. But let's say they do. Do they get an asterisk? Did the Celtics get an asterisk for beating the Heat without Jimmy Butler? Who did they play in the second round again? I can't even remember already. The Cavs without Donovan Mitchell and Jarrett Allen for most of the series. This is just a little bit of partisan stuff here, Decadun. Just because, like, you know, when the Raptors won the title, it's like, oh, it doesn't really count. It doesn't really count. The Warriors, you know, Durant was hurt, Klay Thompson got hurt. They were too injured, so it just doesn't. You get this asterisk. It doesn't really count. You know, and it's just like in every single playoffs, there's always injuries. There's always key injuries in the playoffs every single year. So I'm just curious when this asterisk gets applied versus when does it not get applied. It seems to me the Cavs' whole path to the finals has been handed to them because of injuries. But weirdly, I feel like they're not going to qualify for this asterisk. It's interesting who we Disney, even like the Warriors when they first won their title, and no one denies that they were like the best team of that era. The first title that they won, the Cavs, Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving were both hurt. No one gave them an asterisk. They didn't get an asterisk. Why did the Raptors in the 2019 get an asterisk? I think these are interesting questions that we should be grappling with. Very interesting who we bestow these asterisks on. Who's on the asterisk committee? The one asterisk I would say is the Lakers in the bubble. That to me is not a real championship. I'm sorry to say. You know, you won a special little high talent elite basketball tournament. Cool, like good job. Good. But did you win an NBA championship? Well, no, not really. It's not really the same thing. I would almost say the same thing about the Bucks, Dakadoon, but by the time the Bucks did win the title, there were crowds coming back. Right? Like in the finals, there were crowds, so I think that does count. I think that does count the Bucks title win. As much as it pains me to admit it. Harden out for the Nets that year. Yeah, the Nets were super banged up. Like, there's always injuries. There's always key players that are hurt. Like, every single year. Every single year. And especially when I'm talking about 2019 and the Warriors and everything. Like, that was like a coming off a 5-year run of deep playoff runs. Like, no shit they were getting injured. Like, takes a huge toll on the body. Like, that's part of it. Anyway, it was a pretty boring game last night. I went to sleep pretty early. It's right, Dakadoon. It's just me and you. Just me and you, buddy. It's just me and Dakadoon today. No one else is allowed to chat, actually. Yeah, so I went to bed pretty early. That was nice. I got woken up pretty early. My son woke up at like 5:30. And I was just like, no, I can't. This is way too early. This is way too early. I cannot wake up right now. He has a thing with like waking up in the night and coming into the other bed, which he's had since he was like a toddler. You know? But sometimes, like when he does sleep through the night, like in his actual bed, he'll come in at 5:30 in the morning, like when the sun's coming up, and he's like, "I slept through the night," and I'm like, "Good job, good job." And then I kind of fell back asleep for a little bit, and he went and like read comic books and stuff for a little while while I woke up. Oh, there was time to continue our discussions about Mr. Hyde. That's right. That's how it goes. It was funny because, like, okay, so I'm fully like Zulu pilled right now. I'm Zulu like does something to me. It like worms its way into my brain, and I get really fixated on it. This is the second time that's happened to me with this same movie, and like, we don't need to talk about it too much. But Sean, 1 hour later, I'm still going on about it. But I showed my son the ending when the Men of Harlech scene, which is just like it, you know, regardless of your feelings or whatever political values you want to graft onto that, it's just one of my favorite scenes in any movie. And I showed him that last night because I kind of thought he would find it cool, and he did, but he was a little freaked out as well. He was a little scared by the Zulus and like their whole big like song that they were doing, their whole big chant. But that was actually cool because it was like a good opportunity to like talk a little bit about that with him, you know. And I was like, well, the Zulus, like that's their home, that's their land, they're defending their land, you know. They're not bad guys. They're not being mean, but like they're defending their land from these guys that are trying to take it away from them. So it was like a good opportunity to have that kind of discussion. If you're not spooked by thousands of people chanting in unison, you're not right in the head. Yeah. Especially, I imagine, after you've been besieged for a few days and you're exhausted and tired and dehydrated and starving. And just like waiting to die. And then you hear that chant coming from the hills and it's like, oh God. No, I haven't seen that guillotine, but maybe I'll check that out. Do you mean on the movie or on like the actual conflict? They've got a great bass section, mind. But they've got no top tenors, that's for sure. One thing I didn't realize is that guy, the actor in that scene, was a Welsh singer. It was his only film role that he ever had. And it's like an iconic role, iconic scene. I would love to see that on a big screen with big sound, man. Anyway, I'll stop talking about Zulu. This is the most dad-coded thing that I can't stop talking about this 1964 fucking Michael Caine colonialism movie. But that scene is just really something else. So what else is there? What else is there new to report? Did you teach your kid all the British songs before or after the movie? He did like the Men of Harlech thing. He did really like that. He was asking about Men of Harlech after. The funny guy. And it's a Welsh song, so I think it's okay. It's not full, like, colonialist, because it's a Welsh, like, war song. So one thing I've been kind of stressed out about is, like, I've been kind of needing like a vehicle situation, and I was thinking like I'm gonna have to buy a car because there's some things that are happening in my life, and it's become kind of necessary for me to have a car, which is like not something I can super afford, and it's also just a huge pain in the ass to have a car and have to change the tires and get it fixed and put gas and all this stuff. And I was just like, I'm mentally like trying to figure out how this is gonna work. And, well, that's it, Old Dutch. I signed up for this, like, Caminato service, which we have in Montreal. And it's really cool. I used it for the first time today. It's maybe a little more expensive than what I was expecting. But, like, it's definitely going to be significantly cheaper than, like, making car payments and insurance payments and paying for gas and changing the tires and upkeep and all that kind of stuff. So I feel a little bit better that I'm kind of like being proactive about that. That was something I was really stressed about. You can pay for the higher tier, then the rates are cheaper. Maybe that's something I should look into. I thought I picked the right one, but perhaps I didn't. Yeah, depreciation too, and like it can be cool sometimes. Like sometimes it is really convenient. I think if like as with anything, if money was not a factor, I would be like, okay, sure, no problem, whatever. But since it is a factor, then I have to to make these decisions. But Camino is a really cool service. I mean, it's a really good way, I think, of being able to like have vehicle use in your city, but still cut down on the amount of emissions and recognize this, have kind of an in-between focusing on transit, recognizing that sometimes people do kind of need to use cars, but also there's a lot of people that if you just use a car every now and then you don't need to have one. So that's been something that's pretty cool to sign up for that. No, it's something that I haven't talked about all that much because it's stressful to me. But over the last 18 months or so, I've been living down the street from my former partner and kind of like doing things that way. And I pick up my kid from school every day, and that's been something that's always been really kind of important to me. But she's actually moving now. Like she's moving to like the suburbs, not super far, not like a really super far away thing, but like far enough that it makes it like more complicated to organize everything and do everything. And my kid's going to be going to school like at a different school next year, so it's going to be more complicated for me to like get him back and forth. Which is why I needed to figure out this like car situation, and it was something I was kind of stressed out about, but I'm just kind of trying to, make sure I just keep doing what I have to do. And, it's hard anytime there's big changes that happen, right? Especially when you're used to a certain routine, whether you're a little kid or whether you're an adult grown man, so that's been something that's kind of like coming on the horizon that I've been pretty anxious about. But like I said, I've been kind of taking steps to like do what I have to do, get a car situation figured out, have a routine kind of figured out. And I feel a little bit better about it now that I've been like taking concrete steps to like do what I have to do and to figure this stuff out. It's going to be really hard for me because, he stays with me 50% of the time. But also I see him pretty much every day because I'm often picking him up and dropping him off. And basically next year it's just going to be 50% of the time kind of for real. And I'm pretty nervous about that because I find that hard. I find that part of it hard. I like being able to see him every single day, even if it's just for like a couple minutes. So next year is going to be like a big adjustment for me, definitely. After the summer's over, I'm kind of having a new routine and like a new sort of situation. It's all right though. It's not like the end of the world. It's going to be tough. It's not like I don't love it, but like, again, I think I started feeling sorry for myself about it for a while. I started feeling sorry about it for myself, and then I just realized like I just have to do it. I just have to go day by day and just do what I have to do. And it's going to be slightly more complicated, but like, that's all I have. All I can do is just keep kind of focusing on being there through everything and doing what I have to do. And, it's going to be okay. It's going to be fine. Anyway, that's kind of just an upcoming thing in my personal life that's been on my mind a lot. If you'll indulge me for talking a little bit about that stuff, it always makes me a little uncomfortable to talk about, but it's been something that's been pretty stressful over the last couple of months. Not the same, but I've been taking little steps to sort of shoo away the existential dread to prepare myself for what I need to be, and it's a good feeling. Yeah, I think anytime you're being proactive, when you start just like wallowing, in the it becomes overwhelming, and then you stop doing stuff, and you just wallow in the fear and the anxiety or whatever, and then everything just gets worse. You know, it's not good. This is how you get in pretty destructive cycles. It's nice because you can focus on yourself ever so slightly in the other 50%. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's like I quite like where I'm at right now in my life. Like, I really do. I don't mean to, I'm not trying to complain about it or suggest that I'm like a victim or anything like that. I really don't feel that way. I'm happy where I am in my life. You know, being able to be a dad and just focus on that for like most of my time, and then having a little bit of time off from that, not too much, but just a little bit, is not so bad, you know? And I guess when you go through a big change like that, you don't necessarily just get every single thing that you want, you know? But you have to kind of just accept that. That's what comes with having big changes happen in your life. We're here for you, Rob. Thanks for sharing with us. I really like your recognition.
Count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Of feeling sorry for yourself and then pushing past that. It's something I struggle with as well. I mean, it's really easy. It's really easy to fall into that, isn't it? You know? But it's like, it certainly doesn't help. It doesn't help you at all. Thank you, Sean. And thank you, Diego, as well, for gifting a sub. I appreciate that.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Bon Love.
Thank you, Bon Bon, for the 33 months. I appreciate that. And thank you for listening, folks. I try not to talk about too much about like the weird personal shit going on in my life, but you know, I guess I gotta get the shit out there sometimes. Next year is gonna be tough. It's gonna be definitely an adjustment, you know. Even though you're just some guy that lives in my phone, I'm rooting for you, Rob, and hope everything goes well in the future. This is all just backstory to build empathy with the character that just lives in your phone. You know, it's important. That's how I gain your trust. That's how I gain your trust. I think it's fine to talk about personal stuff. Well, thanks, Diego. I guess it's been a lot. It's been a lot over the last 2 years, you know? Like I've said before, anytime this comes up, like, we all went through shit. As from 2020 on, I think all of us, like, universally, we're going through some shit. And, you know, I'm no different. That's what I mean. I'm not really special. And like I said, I'm not a victim either. I don't, sometimes when I talk about this, I worry that I'm like trying to create sympathy or something, and I'm really not. I'm not a victim at all. You know. Certainly I'm in a situation that like I said, I'm quite happy with where I am right now, but the bad things that I went through were very much like my own responsibility as well. It's not stuff that happened to me. I wasn't some like innocent bystander to it all. It was very much like my own actions contributed to that, all that stuff that I was going through, which is something that you need to recognize as well sometimes. That's part of the not feeling sorry for yourself thing. You're telling me you were a former rock star, a former star basketball player, and you have a son that you co-parent. It's a little hard to believe. I've had quite a life. It's true. It's been a wild ride, seriously. The last since I was about 15, I would say, things just started going crazy, and it's been a wild ride. I've been all over the place. I've worn many different hats.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
See badge.
Thank you, really chill guy, for the 42 months of Tier 1. That's very, very kind of you. And in fact, please, totally unrelated to this, but please check out the latest episode of the Insurgents podcast with our guest, Matt Lieb. It was a really good one. It's funny because I talk to really chill guys sometimes about, and he's talking about like getting grill pilled and working on the lawn, and like, you know, he's like really chill guys really embracing that kind of lifestyle. And it's just like our lives are just moving in totally opposite directions. Oh my goodness. I'm back. I lived the boomer mindset for years, and now I'm going in the other way. Now I'm going the other way with it. Although I do have the boomer mentality in many ways. Still. Oh boy. Yeah, it's been a pretty wild ride, especially the last couple years. But guess what? I'm still standing. And so are you. So are you, chat. We're still here. We're still surviving. Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I got here. Not sure how anyone with a critical brain cell can come out of their last few years with their mind fully intact. Well, exactly. That's what I mean. That's what I try to keep in mind. I think everyone was going through kind of a wild time. Fortunately now, though, everything's calm. All that craziness is over. Everything's back to normal. We got Joe Brandon in office. Everyone's feeling good, mentally, physically. Everything's on the up and up. You know, I feel great now. Glad to know there will be no more like big crises, any more big like geopolitical situations that begin. It's all can just go back to being boring. Can go back to brunch. Brains are getting better. I know my brain is better. You know? Everything's looking good. Very calm on the geopolitical front. Very stable world. Build brain better. That's good. That's good. I never look at Twitch profiles. I never see the pictures. I'm just now learning that Jordan is another alias. And has been your undercover for years. What the fuck? That's actually not Jordan. That's someone that stole Jordan's identity. Is Jordan heir to the U-Haul empire? Yeah, I believe so. Yes. Absolutely. My own moving truck at 18. Oh boy. So there is a lot of important stuff to talk about today. Well, how much time do I have? Once again, I was fucking late. I have at least another 2.5 hours. So I'm pretty good. But we are going to be talking about this ICJ ruling. Lots of stuff to talk about. Lots of stuff to get into. Yeah, there's no news. We can have another chill one. And I still do want to take some time. This week became difficult, but I would like to talk more about Africa and talk more about the Congo and Sudan and all the, people say, like, why are you just focusing on this one thing? Why are you focusing on Israel? And I think there's a number of reasons why we do that. But I do think we should take some time to kind of try to understand certain other sort of like horrifying geopolitical situations and human rights catastrophes that are unfolding right now. So I'm going to hopefully take some time to do that. Possibly, Eugene Puryear is always the person to be speaking to about that, because he's very well informed and up to date about all that. It could be a good idea to reach out to him again. So that's something that I would like to focus on. But people say too, like, especially Israelis and like Israel supporters, they'll say, like, why don't you focus on Congo? And it's like, yeah, we do need to focus on other human rights issues. Like, but like this is the like the central kind of like animating geopolitical situation unfolding right now. And the thing is, though, we don't have like politicians that are like taking money from like some kind of Congo lobbying arm to be like, no, everything's fine there. What are you talking about? Why are we talking about this? We don't have like Congo political officials like addressing our government and bringing politicians over to the Congo to show how everything's great, and then they go back and then they talk about how wonderful it is. And like, you don't have this entire mainstream media apparatus that's just like, no, there's actually nothing wrong with what's happening there. It's actually okay. It's actually totally okay. Like, no shit, we focus on Israel because like this is the only situation that has this kind of like effect or impact on our political system or our media system. You know what I mean? It's like it's so strange. Like if other geopolitical situations were talked about in the same way in either our media or politics, it would be like so weird. We would find it so bizarre and like unsettling. But we have this like infrastructure in place, this massive like lobbying arm just like openly operating for the United States government and the Canadian government. You have this bizarre like media situation where they're presenting this like total backwards, upside down, alternate reality to you every day, and gaslighting you and making you feel insane. You know, if that was any other sort of situation where those kind of aspects were present, it would be like, what is this? What's going on? It's so strange, but it's become like normal to just accept that that's what happens when it comes to Israel. Like if the ICC ruled against like some faction of the in Congo, and our own government were just like, we need to invade the ICC. We need to sanction them. They can't do this. They're not allowed to do this. You know, it would be really odd. Aren't there also Israeli ties to stuff happening in the DRC? I believe so, and that's why I want to like actually take the proper time to focus on it one day so I know what the fuck I'm talking about. And I'm not just like spouting off, which is one thing that as much as I like to spout off a lot about certain things, I like to spout off against things that I actually have like knowledge of. And when I don't have knowledge of it, I know this is rare here on twitch.tv, but I don't want to fucking talk authoritatively about something that I don't actually know what the hell's going on. One of Israel's top exports is diamonds despite having no diamond mines. That's interesting. That's very interesting. Can you imagine if Putin and the entire Russian political establishment called for invading The Hague? Yeah, I'm sure there would be some pushback to that, certainly. Just skim a Wikipedia article and blabber about it. Chat will still believe you. I mean, exactly. This is what some certain prominent streamers do this, but that's never been my method. I like to actually maybe have a basic understanding of something before I talk about it. But, I know that's not for everybody. Mr. Bernoulli. What a great bit. I mean, I did see that Putin was like now offering a ceasefire, saying like, are we ready to make a deal, pretty much. And again, I see a lot of people not from Ukraine who do not live in Ukraine being like, no deal. No deal. The fact that he's saying this means that they're close to defeat. No deal, sir. Pootler, sir. I live in like Wisconsin. I live in Alberta. I live in North Bay, Ontario. No deal, Mr. Putin, sir. Jesus Christ. Like, when is it going to be enough? When is it going to be enough for you folks? Okay, so let's get into this now. I got started a little bit late, so we don't need to do all the chit chat. Thanks, folks, for listening to my personal issues. I appreciate it. So I'm just finding just a video to get us started off here. But what's happened is the ICJ has ordered Israel to halt its Rafah offensive. Let's look at the CBC coverage of it.
And we begin with breaking news on the Israel-Hamas war and a ruling just out from
I mean, right off the bat, even just calling it the Israel-Hamas war is fucking misinformation at this point. This is a war that Israel has fought primarily against little kids and hospitals. Still continuing it. I mean, at least they're not saying the Israel-Palestine conflict, but even just saying the Israel-Hamas war is like nowhere near like an accurate description of like what has been happening over the last 8 months. It's the Israel hospital war. Yeah, it's a war on little kids primarily. So even framing it like that is just nowhere near accurate.
International Court of Justice in The Hague. Now, the judges at the ICJ have reaffirmed earlier orders in a case brought by South Africa. And today, they have ordered Israel to halt its offensive in Rafah. Israel has also been ordered to reopen the Rafah border crossing to give investigators access and to allow for the flow of aid and humanitarian measures.
Israel must immediately halt its military offensive and any other action in the Rafah governorate which may inflict on the Palestinian group in Gaza conditions of life that could bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part.
reporter Alex Caddy is just outside the court in The Hague, where that ruling just came down a few moments ago. Alex, what more can you tell us about the ruling and its potential impact?
Well, certainly this ruling we expected was going to send a very clear message, and it has done that. The court ordering Israel to cease all military operations in Rafah, also explaining some of the logic behind that decision. They say the humanitarian situation in Rafah can be seen as disastrous, and they are not convinced that Israel has put enough in place to cater to that humanitarian disaster or to allow for the safe evacuation of civilians. So twofold measures there. One, the stopping of all military operations in Rafah, and to allow for the access to United Nations fact-finding missions in Rafah as well. So clearly a message from the World Court that Israel has to do more, must do more, and that things have not improved since it last ordered Israel to do so. Now, the big question about the consequences is a little bit more complicated, because although these are legally binding orders, they are not legally enforceable. The International Court of Justice in the Peace Palace behind me does not have a police force to enforce these orders. What they can do, or what the UN can do, is have the UN...
If these institutions really had the ability to enforce these things, you'd think if they were legitimate, they would have that. What's the point of having a world court that can't actually enforce its rulings unless America agrees with them? Does that make a lot of sense? Why you have a world court that is connected to the UN? It's not independent like the ICC, like this graphic is telling us. It's connected to the UN, but has no ability to actually enforce its rulings. What is a court? How is a court legitimate if you can't enforce the rulings? Imagine if you got arrested for a crime and in your own country, your own community, and you get brought in front of court. They're like, you're going to prison for 5 years because of this crime you did. And if you could just please go ahead and report to prison anytime now, that's where you have to go. We're really serious about this. Go to the prison and lock yourself up for 5 years. And if you were just like, I don't really think I am going to do that. And they're like, well, I guess there's nothing we can do. But we're going to very sternly wag our fingers at you. Dang it. Drats. I also don't really like the thought of a world police force with global jurisdiction. I like the thought of it if it's actually if there actually was a rules-based order. I don't like the idea of a world police force that's just relying on American militarism to enforce it. If there was one that could actually meaningfully check American militarism, though, I think that would be good. If there was an actual global democracy that every nation had to live under the same set of rules, that to me would be a real rules-based order. Unfortunately, that's not the same. As much as we like to talk about the rules-based order, that's not an actually accurate description of how our world order works at all. Because it seems like certain rules, people are allowed to break them. Sometimes people are not allowed to. Sometimes they are allowed to. Sometimes there's consequences. Sometimes there's not consequences. It's a vibes-based order more. It's the international vibes-based order. Really something that was actually legitimate, that actually could meaningfully enforce a actual set of rules that everyone had to abide by. Well, then maybe that would make more sense. America has effectively demilitarized all of Europe and has made them depend on American militarism, giving next to no alternatives. It's all for a reason, so that they can enforce their hegemony with no resistance. Yeah, definitely. And all these European countries have just gone along with this. They just all went along with it. Oh yeah, absolutely, Sean. I mean, this has been the main story that we've talked about on this show for going on 4 years now, and we've watched it unfold and we've watched it pick up steam, right? You can really see that we're in a truly are in a new world struggling to be born phase, new stage of human development. You see it in Africa, Asia, everywhere but here. Exactly. Well, here you see us desperately clinging on to the old order, and desperately doing everything we can to prevent this new world from being born. But unfortunately, for our ruling class, that's not something that's going to be possible. They might be able to slow it down for a little while longer, but that's the best they can hope for.
Security Council passed resolutions to sanction Israel, to have weapons embargoes against Israel, and have enforcement action for these orders, but those can be vetoed by the United States. So crucially, the relationship between Israel and Washington, D.C. is now crucial going forward.
And you know, as you're speaking, Alex, there's already a wire out. Allegedly, Hamas has issued a statement saying that they're urging the UN Security Council, as you mentioned, to implement the ICJ ruling. So let's move away from the ICJ for a moment and turn to the ICC, where the lead prosecutor is seeking those arrest warrants for the Israeli Prime Minister, other top Israeli officials, as well as members of the Hamas leadership. Let's talk about the increasing international pressure, presumably even where you are, we can hear people screaming, and that pressure on Israel.
Well, there's certainly diplomatic pressure. We've seen European Union nations, Spain, Ireland, Norway, saying that in a matter of days they will recognize Palestinian statehood. We can expect Slovenia, Belgium, others to follow suit. Crucially, though, Germany, France saying the conditions have not been met to recognize Palestine as a state. That remains a big issue. The International Criminal Court, as you quite rightly say, issuing those arrest, or requesting, I should say, those arrest warrants. That decision will be made in a couple of months. That would mean that Prime Minister Netanyahu, Defense Minister Gallant, would not be able to travel to around 124 countries around the world, including Canada, including most of the European Union states as well, for fear of being arrested. Now, also the leadership of Hamas, those leaders of Hamas who organized the atrocities of October 7th as well, subject to those arrest warrants. But you're right to say that there is a building diplomatic pressure. Perhaps one difference is that the new Dutch government, led by Geert Wilders, which will be formed in the next few days, on which a deal has been reached, is more supportive of Israel than the previous one. So broadly speaking, across Europe, more pressure on Israel to do more, but there are some exceptions.
So, number one, as always, this is how Israel responded to this new ruling. They got ordered by the ICC to stop their Rafah operation immediately, right away in Rafah. What are they doing? They always step up. They step up the murder anytime they get asked, every time they get mildly criticized. That's the Israel MO. Anyway, I quite like Heidi Matthews. She's always really good at providing some insight and analysis into this, so I just wanted to read it out so we get our grip on this ICJ ruling. There was a little bit of an explainer in that CBC hit there, but I wanted to read this thread as well by Heidi Matthews. As the ICJ is now issuing its decision on South Africa's request for additional provisional measures, including an end to Israeli hostilities and withdrawal from Gaza. South Africa had requested withdrawal from Rafah, but modified the request as the offensive intensified. The court must first determine whether the situation has changed since the delivery of its earlier order indicating provisional measures. If so, it must decide whether a modification is appropriate under the circumstances. The court finds that its concerns expressed in March about the situation in Rafah has materialized. The situation is now disastrous. The court notes that Israeli evacuation orders have covered 3/4 of Gazan territory. Here's the actual ruling.
The court meets today to deliver its open
PM Shrew, as it pertains to like these recognitions of Palestinian statehood, I feel like the response from like Palestinians seems to be that it's like an important step that's happening, and there seems to be a lot of gratitude being expressed. So I'm just gonna kind of like just go along with that. I know there's a lot of cynicism about this kind of stuff, which is totally understandable, but it seems like Palestinians seem to view this as a big victory. So, it's the kind of thing that I think we should just kind of pay attention to what they're saying about it.
Its decision on the request for the modification of the order of March 28, 2024, regarding provisional measures submitted by South Africa on May 10, 2024, in the case concerning application of the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide in the Gaza Strip, South Africa versus Israel. For reasons made known to me, Judges Abraham, Shway, and Iwasawa, who duly participated in the deliberation and the final vote, are not in a position to take their seat on the bench today. Judge ad hoc Barak, who also duly participated in the deliberations and the final vote, is unable to join us today for family reasons. I recall that on December 29, 2023, South Africa filed in the registry of the court an application instituting proceedings against Israel concerning alleged violations in the Gaza Strip of obligations under the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, to which I shall refer as the Genocide Convention. The application of South Africa contained a request for the indication of provisional measures. After hearing the parties, the court indicated certain provisional measures by an order issued on January 26, 2024. By a letter dated February 12, 2024, South Africa, referring to, I quote, the developing circumstances in Rafah, end of quote, called upon the court urgently to exercise its power under Article 75, paragraph 1 of the Rules of Court. The registrar informed the parties of court's decision in response to that communication by letter on 16 February 2024. On March 6, 2024, South Africa requested the court, I quote, to indicate further provisional measures and or to modify its provisional measures indicated on January 26, 24. By an order of March 28, 2024, the court reaffirmed the provisional measures indicated in its order of January 26, 2024.
Okay, I don't think watching this entire 30-minute ruling is going to be super valuable. But I'm just kind of trying to get to more analysis of it. I don't think it's going to be really do much good to just watch this entire 32-minute ruling. Here's Heidi again, though. In ordering Israel to immediately end all military activities in Rafah, the ICJ has effectively held that the humanitarian disaster is such that it isn't possible to conduct an offensive in a manner consistent with international humanitarian law. There is some parsing of order itself. My read is that the factual finding that Israel's humanitarian efforts are insufficient to alleviate the risk of genocide in Rafah means that any other interpretation would be unreasonable. And the actual quotation is, the court is not convinced that the evacuation efforts and related measures that Israel affirms to have undertaken to enhance the security of civilians in the Gaza Strip, and in particular those recently displaced from the Rafah governorate, are sufficient to alleviate the immense risk to which the Palestinian population is exposed as a result of the military offensive in Rafah. And the ICJ, this is another part of it, the ICJ directs Israel to halt the military offensive and other activities in Rafah which may inflict on the Palestinian group in Gaza conditions of life that could bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, also known as genocide. Unfortunately, this can be interpreted in two ways. This is from Mike Becker, who used to be with the International Court of Justice. One reading is that this means the direction to halt the military offensive is limited only to acts which might create conditions of life leading to physical destruction. This will invite debate about whether the ICJ has demanded a complete halt in Rafah or not. An alternative reading is that the ICJ views every element of the military offensive in Rafah as potentially creating conditions of life that may lead to the group's physical destruction, thus requiring a complete and immediate halt. Read in the broader context of the case and the ICJ's grave concerns about the disastrous humanitarian situation in Gaza, the second reading seems more likely to be what the ICJ intended, but it is regrettable that this was not made crystal clear by the wording of the decision. That's got to be, like, it's hard not to be cynical about that as well. It's like you'd think, even if this court doesn't have the actual any sort of methods at its disposal to meaningfully enforce any of these rulings, it'd be good to at least get rulings that are clear and unambiguous and don't leave this room for wiggle room or room for discussion or argument or interpretation. Like, that seems to be, pretty important. I thought it was clear. The second version is what I got. Yeah, here's the tricky part, Joe, because I kind of thought it was clear as well. Indicates the following provisional measures. The State of Israel shall, in conformity with its obligations under the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, and in view of the worsening conditions of life faced by civilians in the Rafah governorate, by 13 votes to 2, immediately halt its military offensive, which seems pretty unambiguous, and any other action in the Rafah governorate which may inflict on the Palestinian group in Gaza conditions of life that could bring about the physical destruction in whole or in part. Yeah, okay, so it's saying immediately halt its military offensive, and including and any other action besides the military offensive that may inflict on the group in Gaza conditions of life that could bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. So, yeah, I think it's pretty unambiguous, actually, this immediately halt its military offensive. Yeah, it's a clear and. No, I think I agree with you there, Joe. I'm trying to find some more analysis of this, though. See, then you have this guy, Josh Schlenger, who's just like a nobody, saying it most definitely did not order an unconditional end to the offensive. He says the ICJ, this is just some random guy in the replies, so I don't know what this has no actual legitimacy or authority behind it. The ICJ's order to stop the Rafah operation is conditional. Israel can continue it as long as it does not bring about the destruction of the civilian population. No, I think that's a real stretch. I think that's a real stretch. I think it's pretty unambiguous about the need to stop the military operation. Yeah, of course they will try to twist anything to fit their narrative. That's obviously true. I'm just looking for some more analysis to this. Don't mind me. Here's the BBC. This might be
Hello,
something.
I'm Geetha Gurumurthy. We begin in The Hague, where judges at the International Court of Justice, that's the United Nations top court, have just ruled that Israel must immediately halt its military offensive and other actions in Rafah, citing the immediate risk to the Palestinian people. It also ruled that Hamas must immediately and unconditionally release its hostages. Let's listen to what the judge, who was speaking in the past half an hour, had to say.
The court recalls that in accordance with Article 75, paragraph 2 of its rules, when a request for the indication of provisional measures has been made, it has the power under its statute to indicate measures that are not in whole or in part other than those requested. In the present case, having considered the terms of the provisional measures requested by South Africa and the circumstances of the case, the court found that the measures to be indicated need not be identical to those requested. The court considered that, in conformity with its obligations under the Genocide Convention, Israel must immediately halt its military offensive and any other action in the Rafah governorate which may inflict on the Palestinian group in Gaza conditions of life that could bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. The court recalls that in its order of January 26, 2024, it ordered Israel inter alia to, I quote, take effective measures to prevent the destruction and ensure the preservation of evidence related to allegations of acts within the scope of Article 2 and Article 3 of the Genocide Convention, end of quote. In the present circumstances, the court is also of the view that in order to preserve evidence related to allegations of acts falling within the scope of Article 2 and Article 3 of the Genocide Convention, Israel must take effective measures to ensure the unimpeded access to the Gaza Strip of any commission of inquiry, fact-finding mission, or other investigative body mandated by competent organs of the United Nations to investigate allegations of genocide.
The judge there, the ICJ. Just to give you some initial responses, David Mercer, spokesperson for the Israeli government, has said there is no power in the world that will push us to commit a public suicide, because that's what this is, to stop our war against Hamas. That's repeating a line that would, of course, a consistent line that we've heard from the Israeli government, who I think are meeting now. There was a call for Mr. Netanyahu to meet his top ministers. And Hamas, as reported by the Reuters news agency, has said that they welcome the ICJ plan to send the investigation committee into Gaza. They say they would promise any cooperation that they can give. And they have said that they welcome the decision on Rafah, saying it doesn't go far enough. It's urging an end for Israel's offensive on all of Gaza and looking at whether the Security Council will now look to try and implement this ruling. Well, let's get more now. Our diplomatic correspondent Paul Adams is in Jerusalem, and he told us more about the immediate reaction there in Israel.
If this was the measure that was anticipated, with some debate as to whether or not the court would finally take that additional step. No official reaction from the government so far. It's due to discuss this ruling later today. There is a reaction from the hardline finance minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, who has called it irrelevant and he's dismissed the court as anti-Semitic. These are the sorts of remarks you would expect to hear from some of Mr. Netanyahu's more hardline
The ICJ
colleagues.
is anti-Semitic. Like, you'd think maybe we would start to maybe not take these claims so seriously when, I guess it's one thing when you're going to call this is ridiculous as well, but it's one thing if you're going to call pro-Palestine protesters anti-Semites or whatever. That's bullshit, but it's all right, I see how maybe some people might be convinced by that. But it's when you're the UN is anti-Semitic, the ICJ are anti-Semitic, the ICC are anti-Semitic. Everyone that says anything bad about us is anti-Semitic. You'd maybe think that some people would start to put this together. I don't know if all these accusations of anti-Semitism are being made in good faith. You'd think maybe there would be a little bit more recognition of that, you know? It's a hate crime to not let me kill every single person in the nation. Exactly. You know, and speaking of these bullshit accusations, Jeremy Corbyn is now out of the Labour Party. They kicked Corbyn out, finally. Which is, and anti-Semitism is the reason. And, you know, people wonder, you know, why do you care about this so much? Like, why do you talk about this so much? All this, why do you focus on Israel? All this kind of stuff that people say. But that's the thing. This has been going on for a while. These like totally bad faith accusations. And if you were paying attention to the Corbyn situation, like that was really radicalizing. Seeing this guy's career get totally derailed, and this possibility of a possible progressive movement happening in the UK get totally destroyed by these kinds of accusations, you become quite sensitive to it. And you start realizing the way this is weaponized and used to achieve certain political objectives. I'm still sad he didn't win in 2017 either. Believe me. And he would have won if he didn't get sabotaged by his own party. That's the true crime of Corbynism. Not only was it derailed because of these kinds of totally bullshit accusations, which was entirely dependent and predicated on his support for Palestine and no actual real kind of phenomenon.
TRRS Sankara David 79 Antifada TRRS Sankara.
Echo Waves, thanks for the 3 months. I appreciate it. He would have won, but he got sabotaged by the snakes in his own party who he should have purged on day one. Lesson learned for me, and I hope for a lot of other people that paid attention to that. If anyone ever does achieve any kind of success doing entryism into any of these parties, you got to remember what happened to Corbyn. They're out to get you. They're not your friends, you know? They're out to get you. You got to purge on day one. Day one shit. Will Corbyn double down and start his own party and be the next PM? Well, it looks, according to like polling, that Keir Starmer is going to be the next PM and have a massive majority after basically adopting all the Tories' positions. I wonder if Corbyn will ever, if there's ever going to be some kind of if he teams up with George Galloway. But Galloway has his own problems as well. I admire Galloway's foreign policy positions. I admire his unapologetic way that he fights for these foreign policy positions, that he stands up for Palestinians. But then he's also this reactionary dipshit on other levels as well. If there was a synthesis, if there was a Corbyn-George Galloway synthesis where you had Corbyn's like kindness, progressiveness, you know, and his support for like progressive social movements, LGBTQIA+, and with Galloway's completely unapologetic anti-imperialism, I think you'd have something. That's the synthesis that I'm waiting to see. Someone that has Galloway's righteous anger and his complete unwillingness to bend in any way or back down, but who's not a reactionary dipshit on other social issues. Why is that so hard? I feel like I've been asking that for years now. Why is that so difficult for people to grasp? One day, eventually, someone's going to figure out this synthesis, and it's going to be something. Anyway, let's go back to this clip.
But when it comes to the order to halt the Rafah offensive, I think we can expect a big fat no from the government here. And I think they will probably complain that the court, in coming to its conclusions, only cited what the UN had told them about the situation in southern Gaza. The Israelis have been arguing for some time that they are taking steps, notwithstanding their military operation.
Corbyn's going to run as an independent.
Steps to improve the provision of food and goods into the Gaza Strip. It's very noticeable, for example, that for the 3 weeks or so after May the 7th, when the order to launch the offensive in Rafah began, only about 140 trucks of UN aid entered through the Keren Shalom crossing, the most important crossing point from Israel. But, and this was something the court did not refer to, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of trucks of commercial foodstuffs have gone in through that very same route, allowed in by Israel, escorted by armed guards inside the Gaza Strip, and taken into the marketplace in Gaza. There is food to be had in places. A lot of Gazans can't afford it, but that was an element of Israel's response to the situation in Gaza that the court simply didn't allude to. They also obviously did not allude to Israel's military rationale for attacking Gaza, the complete dismantling of the last remaining battalions of Hamas, and the importance, Israel would say, of securing the border between Gaza and Egypt to prevent the smuggling of weapons, which could lead to a future conflict. Now, all of this was not referred to by the court. The court obviously feels that of in excess of 800,000 people, we think it's probably closer to 1 million by now, is evidence of the increased risk to life and well-being of a huge proportion of the Palestinian population of the Gaza Strip. And that was enough to persuade those judges who had not been persuaded so far to say enough is enough, this operation has to stop.
Paul Adams there speaking to us a bit earlier from Jerusalem. And just to let you know that since we spoke to Paul, David Mencer, who's a spokesperson for the Israeli government, did give some reaction to the news to the BBC. And he said there is no power in the world that will push us to commit a public suicide, because that's what this is, to stop our war against Hamas. We understand the Israeli government are meeting or going to be meeting soon to discuss this ruling. We've also had reports on Reuters of Hamas reaction. Hamas apparently calling on the UN Security Council to implement the ICJ Court of Justice decision, welcoming the ruling and welcoming the call for an investigation, an inquiry, saying that they would cooperate with that. Also, we've had a response from the Palestinian Authority saying they welcome the decision, as again reported by Reuters news agency, saying that it represents an international consensus to end the war on the Gaza Strip, according to a Palestinian presidential spokesperson. We will keep you across all the reaction. Of course, we're going to be looking to the US to see what the White House say, whether this has any impact on Biden's current position of ongoing support for Israel, though, of course, he has warned repeatedly the Israeli leadership not to go into Hamas territory in Rafah because of the risk to civilian life.
They want us to believe that Hamas is the terrorists, yet at every turn, Hamas has shown themselves to be more reasonable and cooperative than Israel. And it certainly does seem like that, doesn't it? No matter what you want to say about Hamas, whether you like him or not, or whether you agree or don't agree, it certainly does seem like that. And the reaction to that whole ICC ruling, I think, is the ultimate example of that. Remember, we spoke about it, but it's like one group reacts with like threatening to nuke the ICC and basically doing these like gangsterish threats to the ICC prosecutor. It'd be a damn shame if someone happened to this guy. You know, like that kind of thing that Netanyahu was doing. And then you have Hamas being like, all right, investigate. Let's have an investigation. Let's have an actual investigation of these claims with evidence and examination and cross-examination. It's night and day, the two responses to these things as well.
This news is funded.
Like wasn't quite ready for that. Gangsterismo at the highest levels. It's true, and that's what it is. It's like we always talk about it. The rules-based order. That's what it is. It's an international criminal cartel. We are ruled by fucking gangsters and sociopaths, liars and murderers. This is our ruling class. I mean, that's what like American imperialism is, right? We're talking about like a few minutes ago talking about demilitarizing Europe so that like all security is reliant on a US hegemony for it to function. It's just it's a protection racket, right? That's what NATO is. You know? That's what it is. It's an international protection racket. That's the thing. If Hamas is to answer for what it did, it requires an examination of the occupation, and that's what Israel can't stand. That's what they absolutely can't stand. And I must say as well, there's some parallels there with Russia also. Russia also, as much as they get framed in our media as being just like belligerent and authoritarian and warmongering, Russia has been open for like just going back the last 10 years, has been incredibly open to negotiation. Has been, even when they get accused of these war crimes, often they're the ones saying like, okay, let's have an investigation into these. And then these investigations don't actually happen. Like with the Bucha situation. Am I wrong? Well, I don't think so. I'm pretty sure their reaction to that was like, okay, if this is what the accusation is, let's have an investigation into what happened. And yeah, we're really open to negotiation and a peace process and the Minsk agreements. Even earlier in this war, we're trying to have negotiations to end it, and it's been the West time and time again saying no peace negotiations. Boris Johnson parachuted into Ukraine. It was like no Zelensky, not allowed. No peace talks. Now Boris Johnson is inviting these Azov guys like into British Parliament. Israel must pay for their reaction. I can't carpet bomb the city of Tulsa just because a Tulsan hurt my family. Maybe I'm oversimplifying. I would trust you to have that power, Lodane, personally. If you did, in this hypothetical scenario, carpet bomb the city of Tulsa, I would be the first person to say, I'm sure Lodane had a good reason. All right? Let's not jump to conclusions here. I'm sure she had a good reason. Tulsa's about to learn why we didn't have health care. Oh, gosh. What else do we have to look at here? It is anti-Lodane not to carpet bomb Tulsa. Completely agree. You're being a real anti-Lodaneite if you say one word. If you say one word about whether Lodane should not carpet bomb Tulsa, we all see your anti-Lodane racism. Okay, we all see it, and we think it's disgusting and shameful. You know, another dad movie that I think I need to watch is Glory. I've never seen Glory before. I think I'm going to have to get that one out. I'm just saying that because I saw the YouTube thumbnail about it. Lodanus, don't feel safe shitposting on the internet. I know.
This news.
Hello, I'm.
Ambassador is speaking, Riyad Mansour. Let's listen in.
مرحبا، سأتحدث بصفتي رئيس المجموعة العربية لشهر مايو.
Chairman of the Arab Group for May, and the resolution that has been endorsed by the Security Council regarding protection of civilians, and then Dr. Mansour will talk to you. The Arab Group confirmed the necessity of protecting the civilians and the humanitarian workers, United Nations employee and staff, and we denounce all attacks against the civilians. And when it comes to Gaza and the violations committed by the Israeli forces against the humanitarian workers and the civilians, I'll take this opportunity to make sure that the main principles and the main interest is to stop fighting in Gaza, particularly in Rafah, and to deliver the humanitarian aid necessary for the people in Gaza and to stop the transfer. The Arab Group welcomes the procedures, temporary procedures of the International Court of Justice and the issuance of an order to stop immediately the Israeli military operations in Rafah. The Arab Group confirmed the necessity of committing Israel to do this without any delay. His Excellency Dr. Riyad Mansour will talk to you. Thank you, my brother Muhammad, and thank you for my colleagues, the ambassadors of the Arab countries. We decided yesterday in a meeting to have this press conference, and as said by my brother Muhammad, there are two topics that are of extremely importance. First, the endorsement of the Security Council regarding the resolution, which is mainly for or against the brutal practices of the Israeli forces in Gaza. In more than one paragraph, they call for stopping this aggression, protection of the civilians, protection of the humanitarian workers, protection of the United Nations employees, and to stop violence and genocide committed by some Israeli officials. And we need to respect the humanitarian international law, and all the elements mentioned in this resolution are quite important. And we'd like to thank Switzerland and the other countries who supported this resolution from inside and outside the Security Council. Voting was great. 14 countries were for, than absentee against the resolution. The resolution is another resolution that Israel must be committed to protect the civilians, the international workers, and the humanitarian staff, and to provide the necessity of life for our people in Gaza in sufficient amount, very quickly, on top of everything, to stop fighting and to reach a ceasefire to protect the civilians and to save lives of innocent people in Gaza. This is our first and top priority as an Arab group in the United Nations. We have done that through the 8 last months. The other important topic that happened today are the resolutions or the decision orders of the International Court of Justice. We welcome these decisions, and we welcome the procedures that the ICJ has asked Israel to abide by. on top of everything, to stop military actions in Rafah. And we said that there are certain procedures by the ICJ that asked to stop every military aggression in Gaza against the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip, and the opening of Rafah Cross, and allowing the humanitarian aid to be provided to the people in need in Gaza with enough amount, and to stop the transfer. Around 80,000 have been forced to leave Rafah, and this is not acceptable. We welcome these decisions, we welcome these procedures, and we support the ICJ, and we insist that the Israeli authorities must be committed, must be respected by Israel and by everyone who are interested in stopping the genocide in Gaza Strip. Israel has nothing to do but to commit itself to all these decisions and imposed by the International Court of Justice, and we would like to thank in this regard the country of South Africa and every other country who supported the request of South Africa, and we need more decisions by the ICJ to protect our people in Gaza from this current genocide. We will continue our efforts here in New York. The Arab group will continue its efforts together with the other groups, and in the Security Council, the General Assembly, in order to see these resolutions and these decisions being respected and implemented.
We are here as Arab ambassadors addressing the media. We are grateful to you. We speak to you all the time to tell the truth, to tell the story that should be told to your audience in all corners of the globe. Two things of extreme importance happened today. One, in the Security Council, we are grateful for Switzerland and all those who co-sponsored that draft resolution and those who voted in favor of that resolution, in which no single country voted against it. That resolution is tailored to Gaza without necessarily mentioning Gaza by name, with regard to the protections of civilians, with regard to the protections of international personnel, including UN personnel and specifically UNRWA personnel, condemning the killing of hundreds of international personnel in the human field, condemning incitement by Israeli officials in killing large number of our people, in essence, genocide against our people, and calling for opening all crossings, providing humanitarian assistance to scale, and accountability of those responsible for these crimes to face the justice that they should face. And we are satisfied that the Security Council adopted this resolution. It would be greatly helpful in hopefully having a ceasefire, definitely stopping this onslaught and preventing the invasion of Rafah. The other subject that we want to share with you is the provisional measures adopted by the ICJ. We are grateful for South Africa and those who supported them for going back to the ICJ, asking them for additional provisional measures. And we welcome these provisional measures, including stopping, the military operation in Rafah. We believe that the provisional measures of the ICJ also previously asked for stopping all military operations in the Gaza Strip and stopping these crimes and potential crimes of genocide against our people in the Gaza Strip. And we also welcome the fact that they called for the opening of Rafah crossing, for providing humanitarian assistance to scale, and to continue fighting against the crime against humanity of mass transfer, including the pushing of 800,000 of Palestinians around Rafah to move to other parts of the Gaza Strip. We will make everything possible in our capacity as a group with other groups, the OIC, NAM, the African group and others, to see the implementation of resolutions of the Security Council, the General Assembly, and the ICJ that calls, among other things, for an immediate ceasefire to take place to save lives and to allow our people to start attending to the wounds inflicted upon them by this aggression of Israel, particularly in the Gaza Strip. We are grateful to the Arab group for standing together, strongly united.
This all seems pretty reasonable.
To push for all these things. We are grateful to our representative in the Security Council, our brothers from Algeria, who are in the forefront, working with everyone, including in this case with Switzerland, to see the success and the adoption of this draft resolution. Thank you for being with us.
Do you expect action in the Security Council? Will you?
Yeah, those are just the reactions there. Yeah, it seems pretty reasonable to me. I don't know. Yeah, cut her off. Cut the music. Cut her microphone. Do the Patrick Beverly. Do you listen to my podcast? Are you subscribed to my podcast? If not, get out. I'm going to find some more stuff that we can take a look at. Just take a brief moment to remind everyone. If you can, please support this program that you're watching by subscribing or gifting subs. As you know, the only way that I'm able to keep doing this show, TRRS, each and every day is if the little number at the bottom of the screen goes up. So if you subscribe, you can join the community. You join the base level of the Friendship Triangle system, get all the emotes and tiny little images, and support the work that I do on here. If you can, please. It's been a bit of a slog this week, which is, whatever. There's ups and downs in doing this, and it all rolls off my back. But would love to finish the day strong by maybe meeting the old sub goal for today. So if you're watching and you enjoy this program and you like being part of the chat or the community, please subscribe if you can and help me support the work that I do here on twitch.tv. The best blog around, exactly. Some people go all their lives without tiny images. I know, it's wild. The number needs to go up, or the knot at the bottom of the screen needs to go away. Exactly. If the number doesn't go up, then I'm forced to pick up the phone and call Raytheon. I'm forced to call Boeing. I have no choice. Northrop Grumman. I have no choice but to do this. Is the merch sale still going on? Oh yeah. 13 more hours of merch on sale as well. Like the shirt that I'm currently wearing right now. On sale right now. If you click on the old merch link there in the chat. You're going to be forced to eat HelloFresh. I really don't want to have to take HelloFresh money. I would really rather not. Raytheon has been begging Rob to sponsor him. Exactly. They're always calling me, texting. They're faxing me. I was getting faxes from Raytheon saying, please let us sponsor your content. All you have to do is slightly turn down your criticisms of militarism and your criticisms of empire. Please. You just have to stop. You just have to turn it down the volume, turn down the temperature just a little bit. And I say, no. I hang up the phone. Absolutely not. I don't think I'll turn down the temperature. I think I'll turn it up. Having some trouble with the T public link not redirecting. That, I don't know what the deal is with that. When I click on it, it seems to work. When I click on it, it seems to work, so I'm not sure what to tell you. We'll let you test the lasers on chatters who say inappropriate things. I think you should all be wearing shock collars, and I should have a little display in front of me that, like, when people act up, I can shock them. I'm not just shocking them with my words and outrageous subversive opinions. Physically shocking them with electricity when they displease me. So still no responses to the call to action quite yet. We're still at a 635 subs, only 29 subs to go. Please, if you can, subscribe to the podcast, folks. Help me make the little number go up. Help me make my little number go up, folks, if you can, if possible. So far, we've got Risk Inverse leading the way this month for gifted subs. We got Talks to Wall, who literally just showed up one day, gifted 20 subs, and then dipped, which was a real power move. And Comrade Bushy at number 3. You'd not shock me. I would simply remove the collar. No, that's not how it works. Cock sailor. That's not how it works, okay? Can't outsmart me. That's what sailor? That's one of our.
Use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
That's one of the original valued community members of this program. Actually, valued community member Cock Sailor. Always happy to have Cock Sailor show up in the old chat. Thank you, Baldwin, for the 500
you can
bits.
Count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
See, look, as soon as Cock Sailor shows up,
you've just become an elite member
good things
of the
happen.
Friendship Triangle.
What a coincidence. As soon as Cock Sailor shows up in the chat, good things start to happen.
You've just become an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
Unbelievable.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Comrade Bushy, thanks for the gifted sub. Perfect Speller, thanks for 5 gifted subs.
Use the
That's
computer
very
to
cool.
mark up the size of the account.
I guess you could say you got a second wind.
Perfect Speller, thanks for 5 gifted subs. Really appreciate that. Mask loves you, thanks for 5 gifted subs. Very, very cool. Thank you for that as well. Ben Bang Boom, thanks for gifting a sub to our friend Cock Sailor. And thank you, Joe, as well, for the 200 bits. Very cool. Okay. There we go. Now I'm not humiliated.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Someone should name themselves Anus Bulge.
Thank you, Anus Beard, for the 200 bits. This People's Conference for Palestine stuff should be interesting. I noticed that there was some like attempted counter programming to that from the Patriotic Socialist set. But maybe on Monday we can get caught up with some of that. You don't need to email back Liquid Death anymore. I wouldn't hate a Liquid Death sponsorship. I wouldn't hate it. I would not say no to really any beverage sponsorship at this point, really. So we do have level 3 of this hype train going, folks. We're close to level 4, 75% of the way. Another couple gifted subs is going to get there. Another couple gifted subs is going to get us all the way to level 4, and then you can get, not only can you get the tiny little images for this program, but the special tiny little images that you get from Twitch hype trains as well. Just a few more gifted subs will do it. Get us to level 4. That's exciting. I know I'm excited. And then we can get back to talking about like important geopolitical issues. We can move past this whole segment where I try to make the little number at the screen go up, which is, it's certainly not my favorite part of each episode. I'm sure it's not your favorite part. We can just move past this. We can move past this whole part. What do you say? I gifted subs to buy Rand Corp sometime to get their offer together for Rob's sponsorship.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Maybe McKinsey could give me some money as well. Bleep Lord, I'm sorry you got censored. Thank you for the 200 bits. Bleep Lord says, valued community member, ass blood. Okay. It's getting a little vulgar. Maybe we need to turn that down just a little bit. It's getting a little vulgar. You should contact McKinsey to optimize your slubs. I think that's what's the whole funny thing about the whole like friendship triangle thing, is I think I use some of that like language. That kind of sociopathic consultant
you can count on
language.
Me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this. You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Risk Inverse, thanks for gifting sub. That's Risk Inverse's 200th gift sub. Thank you so much, Risk Inverse. Very, very much appreciated. And thanks, Lodane, for gifting a sub to our friend Benny. Benny does need the Lodane emote, I agree.
We simply use the computer to mark up the
Let's
size
see if we
of the
get
account.
anything here.
Valued community member Butt Blood.
Thank you, Bleep Lord, for the 200 bits. And now we're only 15 little subs away from getting to the goal, and we can move past this. We can move past this. And really, there's 30 subs until I sing a little song as well. Not that you would be into that. Not that anyone's interested in that. But in theory, if 30 more subs did come in, I would be forced to sing a little song. Which I would really hate. It would really bug me and it would really own me if I was forced to do that. If I was forced to sing by some tricksters in this community donating 30 subs, that would be so frustrating. I'd be so frustrated. Thankfully, that's not going to happen. Thankfully, I don't have anything to worry about here. Oh, it's a nice day today. It's super. I got that cool breeze again. The temperature dropped a little bit, so it's not so oppressive over the last couple of days. I got some nice cool breeze coming in right now. It's very nice. Do you condom hummus? No. No, I don't.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
You know what I did get is some baba ganoush today at the grocery store. That's nice. That's a nice little snack. You get some little dip, something to dip in that. I got these little like little nans, little round nans. Dip it in the baba ganoush. Ooh, baby. And thank you, Anus Beard, for the gifted sub. I appreciate that. Thank you, Anus Beard. I have another account called Cum Vapor. That one is genuinely upsetting, honestly. Like, that's one of the ones where it's just everything about that just makes me deeply uncomfortable on pretty much every level. Yeah, I could feel it traveling down my whole body. Ugh. Oh boy. It's really fascinating folks in this community, isn't there?
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Husker, thanks for the 2 gifted subs. Very kind of you. Got to pay forward my gifted sub since my card was locked. Husker, I appreciate it. Thank you. We can move past this soon. This segment is almost finished. I would like to get back to talking about serious issues soon. We will move on. You know, as you know, folks, I've just got to make that little number go up. I just have no choice. I have no choice in the matter. And thank you for indulging me. We got 30 more seconds left in this hype train, and then we're going to move on here, folks. 12 subs away from the goal. Before we move on here, are there any other fine folks that would like to support this channel? I'm going to move on. I'm not going to talk about this anymore for now. Okay. Okay, let's move on to talking about important shit. And maybe we should talk about this, which is about Palestinians' right to resist occupation, with friend of the show and my own personal friend, and through the transitive properties of the friendship triangle system, your personal friend as well, Vijay Prashad, is on Breakthrough News. Let's take a look at that for the rest of the day, because I'm sure this is going to be a great conversation. As we've talked about when it comes to the whole like October 7th thing, you know, as much as there's been this big effort to obfuscate this, the initial October 7th attacks were against military installations. They were against these military bases and IDF checkpoints outside the Gaza perimeter fence, which is not only like morally acceptable for colonized, occupied people, but it's legally acceptable as well under any semblance of international law. Not that that means anything anymore, but it's true. And that's why there's been this effort, I think, to completely obfuscate what happened that day. Not to say that bad things didn't happen. In fact, I saw there was videos of like some of these Israelis being taken hostage on that day, and when people point out like they were at a military base, like this is not like people going into a kibbutz or whatever. This is like going into a military base and taking people and grabbing people and taking them prisoner, basically. And you still have folks saying, but they were not like on duty. They're not on duty. They're just at this military base where they're part of this occupying army, and people are still trying to suggest that they're like innocent victims or something. And you saw there was all that like bullshit. They were trying to run this scam about these Arabic speakers and putting like mistranslating Arabic to be like, we'll take these women away for rape purposes or whatever, which is not at all what was actually going on. But of course, because Israel and their supporters have this fucking sick obsession with rape and sexual violence that they feel the need to constantly spend every single day talking about. This became another example of that. Gotta ask if they clocked into the soldier job before arresting them. Exactly. Yeah, it's like when they're on, once the clock starts, once they punch in, then it's legitimate. But until after your day's shift, occupying after your day's shift patrolling the concentration camp fence, once you clock out, you're totally safe. Anyway, let's look at this interview with VJ. We might not be able to make it through the whole thing, but let's give it a shot.
New system. We need a new society. We need to demand that which may have sounded impossible even a few weeks ago, but is not only realizable, but an imperative necessity.
That's a good point, Am Howell. Israel certainly doesn't consider Hamas to ever be off duty or retired, so who cares about the IDF? I mean, that is a funny thing to make this distinction, right? A IDF soldier at a military base are still somehow like a civilian, but a 7-year-old kid that gets shot with a sniper bullet, it's like, well, that actually counts. That's Hamas's fault that we did that, which again, you don't apply to the other side. You don't apply if Israeli citizens or civilians are killed. No one ever says like, well, this is the IDF's fault. No one ever seems to make this case. The contrast between the epic music and Brian Becker's flat voice is funny. It is. I like Brian.
President Joe Biden has announced that he is joining with Republican Trump backers in Congress to impose sanctions on the International Criminal Court.
This is really insane.
Because that court dared to suggest
working with
that Benjamin Netanyahu, the head of state in Israel, should be arrested for war crimes.
That toddler was a Hamas general. I mean, we joke around about it, but like they literally say that kind of shit. Like it's actually kind of wild. It's fucking. It's a deeply sick society.
States is sending more bombs and missiles again to Israel as Israel launches its invasion of Rafah and hundreds of thousands of Palestinians flee for their lives. Welcome to this week's episode of the Socialist Program. I'm your host, Brian Becker. Today we're talking with renowned journalist and author Vijay Prashad. Vijay is the executive director of the Tricontinental Institute for Social Research. He is the chief editor of Leftward Books. Vijay, welcome back.
Thanks a lot. It's great to be with you. Thanks a lot.
Well, thank you for joining. I have to say, I was a bit astonished, Vijay, when...
And they're using cookies to get sugar to make missiles.
When Joe Biden angrily went to the podium to say he was going to join with the Republicans to impose sanctions...
Most important election
Israel,
of your lifetime is coming up.
Not on those who are committing a genocide in Gaza, but against the International Criminal Court that dared to suggest that Benjamin Netanyahu should be, in fact, arrested for war crimes. Anyway, your take.
Well, the first thing to note is that the United States government has a very contentious relationship with the International Criminal Court. It's not a participant in the Rome Statute, doesn't accept the jurisdiction of the court. Some years ago, the former special prosecutor, lead prosecutor at the International Criminal Court, Fatih Bensouda, had actually opened an investigation into both the crimes in Afghanistan and the question of Israel's violence in the war against the Palestinians in 2014. She merely opened a file, in fact, two files, Afghanistan and Palestine, and asked that all belligerents in all...
Wow, Rob, seriously? I mean, what a delight it would be to hear that at the same time. That would be crazy if that were to happen. That classic alert that we all love.
All these conflicts be investigated. At the time, the Trump administration, and in the person in charge of this was John Bolton, openly said in a very mafia way that Fatih Bensouda, a high official of the United Nations, would not be permitted entry into the United States in order for her to brief the UN Security Council. Now, This goes against the customary practice that any official of the United Nations is welcomed into the US because the United Nations building in New York City happens to be within the jurisdiction of the United States. People don't know, but when you go to the UN office, you have to show your passport because, in a sense, you're entering international territory. But not only that, Mr. Bolton and other officials of the US government at the time said to Fatih Bensouda that neither you nor your family will be allowed to get visas to enter the United States. No Disneyland for the Bensouda children and so on. It was very much a mafia kind of attitude toward the lead prosecutor.
Right? So you were saying this.
And when a replacement for Fatih Bensouda was to come, they picked a pretty safe guy, a conservative from the United Kingdom, Karim Khan.
No
King's
fish caught so
Counsel,
far,
was
Ames, but thank
chosen
you
as
for
the lead
thinking about me.
prosecutor. My gosh, this war has been going on, Brian, for 7 months of genocidal bombardment of the Palestinians. And Mr. Karim Khan KC, who had gone to Rafah, met with various people, went to Israel, just hesitated to make even a bland statement, really. Whereas in the case of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, within days, the International Criminal Court started framing warrants against Vladimir Putin for the crime of removing children from the war zone. About 20,000 children have been killed or cannot be accounted for in Gaza. 20,000 children. And it is only now under immense international pressure.
I saw Rob's exchange with the libertarian dweeb on that post and lolled. I laughed at that too, because that guy's been my reply guy for a while, that guy they were referring to. And it was so funny because he gave me props. He was just like, I actually respect that you don't just block me and that you interact with me. I think he just is one of these guys, just sometimes they just want friends. I know, Cox Sailor, you know this. You've experienced this before. They just want someone to talk to sometimes. Sometimes that's all it is. I had a nice little chuckle at that as well. But interesting hearing VJ make the same point we were talking about yesterday, where this is the crime of removing children of a war zone versus the crime of mass murdering children, and how vastly the massive gulf that there is between these two crimes.
Led by countries like South Africa, that Mr. Karim Khan KC has finally not framed warrants. It's very important for people to know that. But he has come before the podium and said that the International Criminal Court is now going to think about framing warrants against not only Mr. Netanyahu, but the leadership of Hamas. And the United States government's response to this from the White House has been one word: outrageous. They say it is outrageous to equate Mr. Netanyahu with the leadership of Hamas. In fact, I agree with them. It is outrageous to equate Mr. Netanyahu with Hamas, because Hamas is part of the Palestinian resistance movement. I don't see how you can equate the attack of October 7th with the 20,000 children killed and perhaps close to 40,000 civilians killed in Gaza as a consequence of the bombing of the Israelis with weapons, including 2,000-pound bomb weapons supplied by the United States. There's nothing outrageous about the investigation and then warrants against Mr. Netanyahu. Biden is wrong about that.
Rob solving the mail loneliness epidemic one reply guy at a time.
On the media last night, he was interviewed by international media. I can't remember which one. A European media. They said, well, are you concerned about travel because you might be arrested?
This was crazy, this Netanyahu
because
response.
Of the International Criminal Court. And Netanyahu said, no, the head of the ICC should be worried about travel.
Insane.
And when you speak about mafia tactics,
keep giving this guy lots of money,
Mossad,
billions
the
of
Israeli
dollars.
intelligence record of targeted assassinations of people all over the Middle East, and certainly outside the Middle East as well. I mean, that's a direct threat. That's a direct threat, or at least I interpret it as a direct threat. But here you go, VJ. I want to play a clip. It's a compilation, but it says a lot about what's actually happening, because the Biden administration and the Republicans are virtually the same when it comes to Israel. And I want to talk about why that is. People are sometimes perplexed by why it is. Right now, Biden is under immense pressure. The students all over the country who were engaged in encampments, they were saying abandon Biden, genocide Joe. Young people who are really decisive for the Democrats said they don't want to vote for Biden, not only because of Palestine, but very largely because of the Gaza war. Anyway, here's a clip. It's a compilation. It shows that this track record of American support, when I say American, I don't mean the American people per se. I'm talking about the U.S. ruling class, the two ruling class parties.
Some American people.
Let's watch.
I have the high privilege and distinct honor of presenting to you the Prime Minister of Israel, His Excellency Benjamin Netanyahu.
Why give Israel a rogue terror state billion a year when you can give Rob, a pretty okay guy, some gifted subs? I couldn't agree more, frankly. I could not agree with that more. I like the denim turtleneck on Brian as well. That's a good coat. That's a good jacket. I like that. And yeah, Siparuska, I got this video, just we haven't really had a chance to really focus on the tariff stuff lately, but maybe I can carve out some time to talk about it because I think it's important to talk about.
I want to thank you, Democrats and Republicans.
Was this when he had
for
the
your
bomb,
common
the picture of the
support for
bomb?
Israel, year after year, decade after decade. No matter on which side of the aisle you sit, you stand with Israel.
Of course, they all just stand up. Yes, we do.
And I will
the bomb was
always
at
be
the
grateful
UN.
to
Okay, I
President
remember
Obama
that.
for that support. This Capitol Dome helped build our Iron Dome. We must all stand together to stop Iran's march of conquest, subjugation, and terror.
You have the American accent. You're from Philadelphia, my friend. You are from Philadelphia.
VJ, the last time Netanyahu
You're not indigenous
spoke
to the Middle
before
East.
both houses of Congress, he was interrupted with ovations 39 times. Quite remarkable. Anyway, your thoughts, and then I want to go to some of the definitions after you give your response. But I want to ask you to talk about why the United States ruling class parties have such allegiance to Netanyahu and to the state of Israel.
You know, this is a perpetual problem for people. Why do the two parties, why does a swath of the US ruling class back Israel? I remember having a very long conversation with Noam Chomsky about this. Is it the tail or the dog that wags it? You know, what's going on here? Is it Israel that has a sort of effect upon the United States, or does the United States define Israeli policy? I remember in that conversation, we sort of came to the agreement that there's almost a unified approach. There are three parties in a way. There's the Democrats, the Republicans, and the Israeli ruling class that seem to share a great deal of ideologically, but also in terms of how they want to manage the Middle East. I mean, Israel provides a role for the US ruling class when it comes to managing and defining US power in the Middle East.
The
and so on.
Ouroboros of
But it's a
suck.
perennial question, Brian. We'd have to spend days discussing and debating whether the tail wags the dog or the dog wags the tail. One of the interesting features, however, is that there are some pretty bizarre backgrounds to this. You know, there's Christian Zionism, which plays its role. There is the role of
Who are
the
anti-Semites, by the
Israel
way.
lobby, which plays its role.
These Christian
There's the role of
Zionists
the
are
arms
anti-Semites.
lobby. I mean, people don't realize that Israel provides a real function to US arms manufacturers when it comes to selling weapons to countries that have either had been accused of nuclear proliferation, like India, or to countries that the US simply can't sell weapons to because of the Pressler Amendment, which blocks certain kinds of arms sales. The United States based arms industry has joint ventures with Israel. So, for instance, when India exploded nuclear weapons in a test in 1998, India bought US grade.
I think the correct analysis is seeing them as different factions of imperialists. I mean, yes, like I think it's like I see them as being part of the same faction, really. But the thing is, it's like, yeah, you have the United States is the head of the snake, right? It's the head of the rules-based order, the Fourth Reich, or the International Criminal Cartel that we've been talking about, right? Israel is their attack dog in the Middle East, and I think there is some like push and pull sometimes. They do diverge a little bit, but I think a lot of, like we've been talking about, I think a lot of that is like kayfabe. Whenever this like, oh, Israel's so out of control, they're not listening to our instructions, they're not listening to us. A lot of it is just like, again, it's like, oh, my crazy partner, I can't control them. Oh, I'm so sorry. That's why you got to deal with us. I do feel like whatever animosity that there might be, or the feeling it seems like they might have different or diverging values or interests, I think that's largely kayfabe. You know, it's just for everyone's benefit, so we can pretend that they don't have this kind of like colonialist relationship to the same extent. You train in it, yeah, it's good cop, bad cop, like I was talking about yesterday. You train an attack dog, you don't get to act surprised when someone gets bit, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. The good cop, genocidal cop routine. This is an interesting point, though. I think the ruling class in the US kind of understands that Israel's fucking up the game. I do think there's a bit of that. I think that's a good point. Like, there's certain people that are like, okay, you can rein it in a little bit now. Like, come on. Like, you're kind of totally, you're actually screwing us a little bit now, and like they can't do it. But that's what they've unleashed. I mean, they created that situation. Now that's what's been unleashed. But like, if they were really worried about Israel giving up the game, they'd stop arming them at the same time, right? Like, if that was really if they really felt like, oh, we got to cut Netanyahu loose, we got to rein this in, they could do that, right? They could stop the offensive right now, but they're still not doing that. So it's amazing. Like, even if they might be a little concerned about that, they still haven't gotten to the point about yanking the chain at all, really, in any way. That's when they'll push out Netanyahu. And that's the amazing thing about all these rulings, like with the ICC or the ICJ or whatever. They have an opportunity to cut Netanyahu loose if that's what they wanted to do. They have like a gift-wrapped opportunity being delivered to them. You really want to get rid of this guy? You want to rein this in a little bit? You want to yank the chain? You got a perfect excuse to get rid of him right now, and they're still not doing it. Which, that I think is pretty amazing.
Weapons from Israeli manufacturers, joint ventures with US companies, even at a time when US companies couldn't directly sell to India. So there's a host of very interesting, obligations both ways that play in this kind of alliance that these countries have. One interesting feature of the clips you showed was what Mr. Netanyahu said at the end of the clip, where he talked about Iran. You know, it's interesting how both the United States and Israel have used Iran as a kind of cover for the occupation of the Palestinians. Israel has taken from the US a blank check for its occupation against the Palestinians because it claims to be a frontline state to block Iran's ambitions in the region. I think that's a very interesting maneuver that Mr. Netanyahu pioneered when he was first prime minister in the 1990s. He began to lift up Iran as a great threat, and he began to sort of blind people to Israel's role in the occupation by deflecting and talking always about Iran. And in fact, in his speeches in the Congress, in the US Congress, he comes there to talk about the Iranian threat. He doesn't say a word about the Palestinians. And it's this duplicitous nature of the kind of commentary of people like Netanyahu and other elements of the Israeli ruling class that, provides cover for the occupation of the Palestinians.
Yeah, and when we go back to the topic, and again, it's going to be more than this show can cover, about why the U.S. has this apparent unconditional support, at least since 1967 for the state of Israel. If people think about it as the world became a colonized world at a certain point in the middle of the 19th century, the latter part of the 19th century, the entire world was colonized. But there are always contradictions between the big colonizers and what you might call the little colonizers. So there were the big colonizers who colonized Haiti from France, and then there was the white ruling class little colonizers who oversaw the plantations. And at a certain point, there was a contradiction between the big colonizers and the little colonizers. The big colonizer in Britain with the 13 colonies, and that obviously developed into a contradiction where the U.S. colonies declared their independence. You could see it in the case of Zimbabwe. There were contradictions between Britain and what was then Rhodesia. So all kinds of contradictions, but the basic element of the colonial domination of the region or of that area was the motivator for the colonizer, the big colonizer's interest. So
like reject nihilism. He says, it does look like they're just prepping to scapegoat Bibi so that we can all just say, move on, nothing to see here. Germany, of all places, stated they'd abide by the ICC's judgment. And like, I totally understand that analysis, and I don't know that you're wrong, but I think what's surprising for me is that they haven't gotten to that point yet. Like, that's the crazy thing to me. Like, it's like they could have cut him loose by now, they still haven't. Even after the ICC is issuing arrest warrants for the guy, they can't cut him loose then? Like, what the fuck are they waiting for? That's what I find very confusing about that. Like, I get this whole idea that they are kind of scapegoating Bibi. You see like a lot of like progressive Democrats or like whoever in the progressive caucus being like, oh, Netanyahu's war, the right-wing Netanyahu government, and using that kind of language. But still, it's just like what are they waiting for if they're going to cut him loose? Like, what more excuse do you need? Like, how many more ways out do you need to have? It makes one assume that they want the genocide. It does. And Joe Biden has made that pretty fucking clear. It does kind of seem like that.
French, the Americans, the British, the Dutch, the Portuguese, the Spanish, all of these different colonizing powers at certain points had contradictions with the ruling class elites who were managing the colonies for them. In the case of the Zionists want to expand and expand and expand. The U.S. wants Israel. They don't care about that much. The U.S. wants to dominate this oil-rich, geostrategic, important region. And Israel is in many ways like an attack dog. It's an extension of the Pentagon. Anyway, Vijay, I want to go on to some of the issues of definition here, because one of the reasons I reached out to you last week was you wrote an amazing dossier for the Tricontinental Institute for Research. It's brief. People can read it quickly, but it's so important because you take up certain words, like the words of occupation.
You said, could it be done? It seems like the Israeli public wants bloodshed as much as Bibi does. And there's certainly truth to that, but there's all kinds of anti-Netanyahu sentiment in Israel right now. Like there's tons of Israelis that are calling for his ouster. And there has been for like quite a while now. So it's strange, the fact that they're still continuing to stand by this guy. They're threatening to sanction the ICC for possibly issuing an arrest warrant for him. Well, I think there's different factions, Pathogen. I think there are factions that don't think Netanyahu is going far enough. There's also factions that, like a lot of these families of these hostages, are asking for an end to the conflict so they can get their family members back. And you have these people being like getting the shit beaten out of them by police. There's all like he's not a very popular figure. That's the amazing thing, right? It's not even that it's like one specific faction. He's generally quite unpopular. So it's not like, people like Joe Biden are like staking their whole reputation on backing this guy who's deeply unpopular in America, but he's unpopular in Israel as well. It's pretty amazing. That's the great political instincts of Diamond Joe, though.
The words
they have no
of
reputation
apartheid,
to stake at
the
this
word
point.
genocide. Because in a certain way, we're chanting these words. People are using the words rhetorically, but the words actually have legal definition. I want to start with the question of occupation, because you said in the beginning of this show, you don't equate
when the stuff with the ICC is about protecting themselves. That's absolutely correct.
Hamas with the Israelis. Now, in American media, you'll be taken to the shed for that. You'll say, how could you possibly equate or draw a comparison between the great democratic Netanyahu and the terrorist Hamas organization? And you put it on the opposite side. You say, well, yeah, there shouldn't be equivalency because, in fact, the people who are living under occupation have a right to resist. And that comes from a definition of occupation and also legal obligations, requirements, and rights for the people who live under occupation. So let's start with the word occupation.
Yeah, just before we get to that, Brian, I just want to lay a ground rule for people when they think about these issues. And that is to say that the greatest treaty that we have in the world, the one with the highest consensus, is the United Nations Charter.
Hell yeah, Dr.
That's
Maggot.
the document, the legal document that all countries have signed on to. And that sets the foundation for
Most of them don't like them and nonetheless share his goals. It's like your corruption is making it harder to do genocide. We got to get this guy out of here. Man. And yeah, I agree, reject nihilism. He is a gem, VJ. And that's why I'm happy to have him as my own personal friend.
everything that I'm going to talk about in terms of legality. The UN Charter is
This man gave a thoughtful answer about gooning on this very program just a few months ago.
Of over 100 years of legal doctrine around international law.
He should go on Tanky Group Therapy.
Occupation actually predates the UN Charter, but is then incorporated into it. It comes from the Hague documents, and it comes from the Geneva Conventions. The legal definition of an occupation is when one belligerent power in a time of warfare takes control of a territory and population of another people and holds it. Then that condition of a belligerent power taking control of somebody else's territory and population and holding it, that condition is known as an occupation. And when there's an occupation, there are certain obligations and duties, and as well as rights that are afforded to the different parties. The occupying power, and that's a term in international law, it's not a moral or sloganeering term.
Sean, the whole thing with the pier is crazy too, because it's like, okay, there's a blockade preventing aid from getting into this region that we personally are funding and arming and supporting and not doing anything about. So we'll spend a few hundred million on building this pier so we can bring in even less aid than what's necessary. And even with it being finished, none of the aid that's even come through this pier has actually reached anyone in Gaza. So it's like, good. Congratulations, guys. Well done. You did a fantastic job. Bang up job there. Bizarre. Maybe you should just get your allies that you're sending billions of dollars and all these deadly weapons to stop blockading the aid from getting in. Like our friend Coxtailor was saying, it's almost as if they don't actually want the aid to get in the first place. And this is all just like fucked up political gamesmanship.
The occupying power's formal definition.
We
has
put the guys
duties
currently blocking
towards
aid in
those
charge of the pier.
whom you've occupied. For instance, you can't transfer the population.
Great stuff.
You can't treat the people there without dignity. You have to treat people as if they are your own citizens. In fact, they must be afforded all the rights and
That
responsibilities
kid's like my son's age.
of people in a civilized world. They can't be, kept in concentration camps, mistreated in different ways. There can't be a separate law for them. That's the obligation of the occupying power. Now, the occupied people certainly have a right to resist their occupation and to remove the foreign occupiers or the occupying power from their territory. In fact, in 1960, the United Nations General Assembly passed a very strong resolution which reaffirmed the right of occupied people to resist their occupation. In the context of the struggle in Guinea-Bissau, the United Nations again weighed in to specifically say that armed struggle is part of the repertoire of struggle in the right to resist. It doesn't say that armed struggle is the only way, but it's part of the repertoire, meaning you can fight on a civic platform, marches, and so on, but also.
And as we talked about this numerous times, we talked about this yesterday, but in terms of armed struggle, it's not the only solution. It's part of the repertoire. And as we've talked about, Palestinians have used every single nonviolent means that's been available to them for years and years and years and years and years. Making speeches, talking to politicians, lobbying governments, engaging in nonviolent resistance, boycotts, the Great March of Return, marches, slogans. They've used every single means at their disposal and still are. And then when after years and years and years of this, when it finally bubbles over and boils over, and there's this explosion of violence, people say, "Look at these violent monsters." So not only do they have the right to engage in that kind of violence, engage in armed struggle, but it's not like they immediately have just exclusively relied on that. It's been this occupation's been going on for 70 fucking years. All these campus protests are nonviolent struggle, and they get crushed by cops and administrative threats, and they get called violent as well. And so does BDS. BDS gets called violent as well. It's all violence, apparently.
Armed struggle because you are held forcibly by arms. Violence is imposed upon you by the occupying power. Therefore, you are entitled to fight with all means necessary to overcome the violence of the occupying power. That is the definition of occupation. It is, in fact, so commonplace in the United Nations that East Jerusalem, the West Bank, and Gaza together are known as the Occupied Palestinian Territory, the OPT. That's how it's referred to in UN documents. It's completely a banal statement that there's an occupation. And it's stunning that it is becoming criminalized to use the word occupation to describe what is happening today in Palestine.
How dare you describe it as an
It's there,
occupation?
of course, in Western Sahara, in different parts of the world, the idea of occupation applies.
I think it's important to talk about these legal issues and definitions, even though in some ways it may seem a little bit, off the beaten track, because when you see a genocide, who cares about legal definitions? You can be horrified, outraged, mortified by what you're witnessing. And there's obviously no equivalency because Hamas, which was carrying out in an effort to break through the occupation, because the people in Gaza...
Just today, I saw a bunch of Israelis with the purported opinion, "I feel bad for Gazans, but the U.S. students deserve death." Jesus Christ, these people are so depraved. We watched that Al Jazeera documentary, The Lobby, and I think that's really fascinating because they Israelis fixate on campus activism. That's been a big plank of the Israeli lobby. Anytime there's any kind of pro-Palestinian activism, they get in there and start throwing these kind of accusations around, accusations about anti-Semitism or whatever, and try and disrupt whatever kind of solidarity movements are growing there. And that's why this, over the last 7 months, it's been so unique, I think, because like the violence is unique in our lifetimes to see like the level of it. As a result, the activism is increasing, especially on college campuses, and they're freaking out. And one of the reasons they're freaking out as well is that Israel, there's been this effort for decades to ensure that Israel or Palestine doesn't become like the big progressive cause, you know, especially like the way that apartheid did in the 80s. Because once it does, that's kind of like the beginning of the end for your entire project. And that's what's actually happening right now. It is becoming like the cause. It's like this big generational movement now. And they recognize that. They see that happening, and it terrifies them because they know it spells the end for their occupation. It spells the end for their entire settler project that they've been investing so much into. And that's why they're totally freaking out about these campus protests. But the more they freak out and the more these protests are met with brutal violence, the more students especially, are being radicalized. Just like Lethal Weapon 2. That's right, Lodane. Diplomatic immunity. They don't want to become those guys. They've been a propaganda machine for decades, and we're expecting to work the same way, but there's a shift, but also a gap broken by their own wanton violence. That's it. They've overplayed their hand. They've overplayed their hand over the decades, and especially over the last 8 months. Whatever goodwill they might have had, whatever legitimacy they might have had, it's all just gone now. And it's not, that's like once you lose that, it doesn't come back. And I think that's in the same way that we see America currently acting out in these desperate ways because they're aware on some level that their empire is in decline. Israel is like a microcosm of that larger sort of trend, right? Israel is like a part of that American hegemony, and like on they're collapsing. Their legitimacy is collapsing. And they're freaking the fuck out over it. And they should be scared. You know, they should be. Their project is collapsing. No, Lodine, I think you're absolutely right. There's this shift that happens where you know these places South Africa gets cut loose, and then you see like the American propaganda machine, even in Hollywood, start to villainize them like that. You know, I think that's totally legitimate. As I've talked about before, I don't know that Israel will ever be cut loose by the U.S. in the way that South Africa did, because Israel is so much more strategically important to their goals and their hegemony in the way that Africa wasn't really. South Africa wasn't. So I don't know if the same experience is going to happen, but yeah, if that moment ever did come, or if the U.S. if it just got too untenable and they did have to cut Israel loose, you would see something. You would see that. You would see all of a sudden this big shift happen. Yeah, it took the ANC decades, absolutely. Like there was a lot of support for apartheid right up until the end. And again, there was a mirror image of the kind of campus activism that we're seeing now. That would be crazy though if we ever get to that point where we see buddy cop movies with an Israeli bad guy. You never know.
Are occupied. There's no question about that. They're living under siege. It's been under siege for almost 20 years. But even before that, Gaza had illegal Israeli settlements in it. The Palestinian people had no rights. Most of the people there had already been driven from their homes and villages by earlier ethnic cleansing operations by the Zionist forces. So there's no question that that what Hamas was doing, under the definition that you provided, is not only justified in a political sense, it's legally justified. And the Israelis can say, well...
That's a good point, Johnny. They could always just financially kneecap them after the ANC took power, which is exactly what they did. They were like, oh, Nelson Mandela, he's such a hero. We're so happy that apartheid is over. We love Nelson Mandela. And meanwhile, these institutions like the IMF descended on South Africa and crushed whatever possibility that this new regime had to do like land reform or any of the more radical things that they wanted to do. They could use these institutions to kind of keep them in check and then kind of absorb the anti-apartheid movement and absorb the energy of it. The issue, like Bikram Gill was talking about yesterday, is that there are alternative financial pathways for countries to take. Exactly, yeah. That's another reason they're freaking out over these new kind of institutions, BRICS and all this kind of stuff. Need I remind anyone when AFRICOM was started and coincidentally when China started being a rising trade partner with African nations?
We have the right of self-defense because the Hamas attack on October 7th resulted in the killing of civilians.
New Indiana Jones and 48 and Zionist terror militias are the villains.
And many of the civilians in Israel were also killed by the IDF forces. But some civilians were undoubtedly killed. So the Israelis can say, well, you killed our civilians, and now we are justified in carrying out the war in Gaza because it's an act of self-defense.
Even when those civilians are actual soldiers.
Sort of media says, and it seems like most of the people in Israel agree with it. Under the definition you gave, the Israeli occupying force doesn't have the right to defend itself. Let's just talk about that. Does the occupying force, from a legal point of view, have the right to, quote, defend itself when the occupied resist, including the resistance with arms?
See, self-defense is an interesting phrase because it assumes that somebody else has started the violence against you. That, you as Israel are a peaceful, non-confrontational power. There's a borderline between you and Gaza, and that somebody has attacked you, and therefore you have the right
They're
to
doing that show Fauda on Netflix. It's like 24, but of the IDF. I wonder if Marvel is going to go it because they have their whole Israeli superhero. Isn't it like Sabra or something? There's like the whole MCU. There's like an Israeli MCU character that's supposed to be introduced soon. I wonder if they're going to go ahead with that. I feel like that would maybe not be the best business move at this time.
Defense. So then October 7th, by the logic of self-defense, is the start of history. History starts when the people from the Palestinian resistance attack these kibbutzim in the borderlands of Gaza. But of course, that's a ridiculous understanding of the situation because Gaza is not an independent territory.
Their superpower is just diplomatic immunity. The superhero Sabra, it's like their primary villain is like a fucking little kid. It's like an 8-year-old kid. That's the big super villain. She can blow up schools and hospitals with the power of telekinesis. Wow. She can break any international law and not get in trouble. She can instantly accuse all of her opponents of being anti-Semites.
Become suddenly unprovoked, belligerent against
weakness, rocks
the Israeli
thrown
state.
by kids.
The Israeli state occupies Gaza. This is an interesting issue. There are many people who say, but Israel pulled out in 2005. No, Israel didn't pull out in 2005. Israel dismantled its illegal settlements in 2005. But Israel continues to police the borders of Gaza and continues to, in a sense, not only the land borders, but the Mediterranean Sea border.
Look at these sickos.
Israel also defines what comes in and out of Gaza. In other words, the occupation of Gaza continues. the United Nations
Superpowers
continues
Captain
to
America's
call
UN
Gaza
Security
part of
Council
the
veto.
occupied Palestinian territory, in which case the people of Gaza are occupied. They have a right to resist the occupation, to end the occupation. Now, when they are resisting their occupation, of course, the Israelis can fight back because they are the occupying power, but they don't have a legal right to fight back. In fact, they have basically, they have given up their legal right to fight back by being the occupying power. They've already been a belligerent. So, in a sense, history doesn't begin for Gaza, strictly speaking, on the October 7th, 2003. We can say it begins in 1967 when Israel went and occupied that territory, which had been jointly administered by the Egyptians, United Nations, and others. So, since at least 1967, if not earlier, Israel has been the belligerent occupying power of Gaza. And so, therefore, it has surrendered its right to self defense. Now, that doesn't mean that it can't fight against people who are trying to resist. But that fighting is not its right to self defense. That fighting is the occupying power trying to maintain its occupation. Now, again, Brian, I look like I'm playing with words here, but what I'm trying to establish is that the right to self defense, in fact, does not apply to an occupying power. Merely the occupying power's attempt to maintain its occupation. It looks the same, but it's entirely different in terms of from the perspective of international law.
Yeah, so I think this is very important for people because, and one of the reasons I wanted to do this discussion with you, VJ, is that these words, even though they seem in a way, as I mentioned, kind of perhaps for some people who are just outraged by what they're witnessing, they're like, you're playing with words, who cares? But it actually does matter. It really matters for people to have an understanding of legal definitions because the legal definitions are reflective of what's going on in society. And the UN Charter and the UN resolutions on the question of occupation actually constitute a step forward for humanity because until then, the colonized people, according to international law, which was always created by international imperialism, they had no rights. They weren't even people. They were less than people in the sense of how people in the colonized parts of the world, which was the majority of the people of the world, how people were treated. So the people in Haiti who were victimized by endless invasions, let's say when the Marines went in 1915 and landed in the port and marched into the center of Port-au-Prince and emptied the bank and brought all of the money back to New York City, to New York City Bank. There was no definition about the right of Haitians. The Haitians just were the target. They were the subject. They were the victims. And as a consequence of the revolutionary movements for decolonization and socialism, some legal definitions have been put into place, like the question of occupation and the rights of those who live under occupation, such that it gives humans
I wonder if a man from a country that was explicitly occupied for 90 years, let's be honest, it was longer than just the British Raj, has any idea about occupation. And yeah, India was occupied for over 200 years. Yeah, it was like the official occupation was just the British Raj, but when it was the East India Company, it was effectively like the exact same thing. But yeah, I think he might have a few ideas about this concept and what it means.
Status to those fighting for liberation. That's why this is important. It's part of a historical trajectory, and in that sense, not playing with words at all.
Thank you, Lodane.
I mean, I would hesitate to say that these resolutions are merely playing with words, because you're exactly correct. I've gone back and read some of the prehistory, including the Hague documents, the Geneva Conventions, and a number of the legal scholars that helped draft those texts had rather vicious ideas about the people who had been colonized. They believed, for instance, that the people who had been colonized were lesser, as you said, savages, and so on, and that they needed to be held in trusteeship. They needed to be held and governed because they were too childlike. They couldn't govern themselves. So at the Versailles Treaty in the League of Nations, the concept of trusteeship was put forward, that certain parts of the world would be mandate territories. Syria was a mandate territory to be governed by the French. Palestine was a mandate territory to be governed by the British. That was the thinking up to the League of Nations, that people in these parts of the world, when occupied, were actually being occupied so that they could be advanced from a childlike state to an adult state. The advance of the UN Charter and then these resolutions that come after, in fact, convert the idea of trusteeship and of mandate into the idea of occupation and the occupying power's duties and the right to resist of the occupied people. It's an enormous advance in human thinking about what happens when a belligerent power takes over the territory of another power. Until recently, within reach of our own history, people used to believe it was perfectly okay to go and occupy a place, Palestine, by the British and hold it in trusteeship through a mandate from the international bodies. Now, that is no longer considered appropriate. Now we actually get angered when a people are held in occupation, whether the Palestinians or the Sahrawis by the government of Morocco, or for a very long time, you well remember, Brian, how we all marched on the streets for the freedom of East Timor from the Indonesian military dictatorship, now Timor-Leste, an independent
US
country.
backed
These
as well.
independence struggles were premised on a new understanding of international law, which at bottom recognized the humanity of all people and said that we don't have a planet of childlike people and adults. We are all at the same level of history, and we all deserve a right to govern ourselves, even if we do it badly. We shouldn't be occupied by somebody else with their arrogance and their pretensions to be our trustees, until we are old enough to rule ourselves. New international law has overcome old international law. And I'm very clear on this point that in the case of the Palestinians, this idea of the Palestinians as a people who need to be governed because they don't have the capacity to govern themselves, this is contrary to international law, and it's also contrary to basic natural law principles of the decency of humans, and not saying that people don't have the ability to govern themselves. I was extremely disappointed to read a statement made by Salman Rushdie, the famous writer, saying that if Palestine were free, then its government would be Taliban-like. I mean, that's Mr. Rushdie, a ridiculous statement.
He was also, Rushdie also did a "why don't the college protesters talk about Hamas" thing. What a nerd.
The right to govern themselves. I mean, Mr. Rushdie lives in New York, Brian, and not to be too snooty about this, but looking at recent US governments, I would say that perhaps the United States should be taken over in trusteeship by somebody, because it can't seem to govern itself. They keep having government shutdowns, imbecilic politicians making ridiculous statements. To talk so arrogantly about a people in the middle of a genocide is really quite scandalous. But it comes from this idea that certain people simply don't have the right to rule themselves, and that is no longer a position that is held up by international law. Indeed, we are in the opposite, and thanks to a great deal of struggle by the third world countries within the UN, we have a much better basis in international law now to look at issues such as the Palestinian conflict against the Israeli occupation.
Listen, I'm going to leave it there. There's still about another 30 minutes or so in this video. Please, I'm going to put the link here in the chat if you want to check out the rest of that and support Breakthrough News and the work that they do. I have just a little, so we heard a number of arguments there. We heard a number of arguments, and I just did want to, because in the interest of being fair and balanced, I wanted to put out just like a counterpoint, just so we can understand both sides here. You know, very nuanced. That's what I'm about, is having that kind of nuance. So here's the counter argument.
Skibbity Biden.
Skibbity Biden. Skibbity Biden. Skibbity Biden. Joe. Skibbity Biden. Hitler's language. Trump is using Hitler's language. Trump is using Hitler's language. Skibbity.
Skibbity Biden.
I could see everyone in the chat really enjoyed that, so I'm glad I put that on. That's good. Why do you hurt me? Why was I programmed to feel pain? I'm sorry. Sometimes, no matter how much I love chat, sometimes I have to press the punish chat button. I don't like it. I don't like to have to do it. Sometimes I have a little button in front of me, the punish chat button, and sometimes I just got to do it. It's great show. Thanks, Rob. Pain, though. Thank you, Cocksailor. I'm happy you passed by today. Always happy to have Cocksailor show up in the chat. But that's true, though. It's really just not even a good parody of Skibbity Toilet. Like, it's not even, it sounds nothing like it. It's just Joe Biden in a toilet. It seems like, it's like someone, if they read the Wikipedia article about Skibbity Toilet and didn't actually watch any of the videos. They just say Skibbity. That was the only thing. I don't even want to ask what the fuck Skibbity Toilet is. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. That's loud. Does this one even have the song? I need the song. This is all part of the extended Skibbity multiverse. Just wait? Okay. I'm going to trust you on this one. It's cutting off the rails, I would say so. My son does enjoy Skibbity Toilet, yes. He's the one that told me about it. What the fuck is going on? It's a great question, Red Scary. Great question. This is what the youth of America is into now. Just play the original. Do they even sing this? I mean, if it doesn't have the song, this is like the epic storyline here. I need episode 1. This has gotten way out of control. Here we go.
What the heck is going on yes, yes. What the heck is going on you?
Like, that's the thing. The Biden thing was like nothing like this.
What the heck is going on What the heck is going on you?
Why is it muted? Okay, like the whole skibbity thing has just gotten out of control here. It is funny to like you're saying, it's funny, like, oh, the younger generation, they're so screwed, they're so cooked. Look at this skibbity thing. It's like, this is just like random humor that you saw at any time the internet existed. You see that and you realize you're just powerless against them. This is more topical. Okay, what's this? How do you block the song? That's insane.
Hey, look, I found some oil. Hey, look,
That's the real Biden skibbity variant. Now this is skibbity Biden, exactly. The actual one they showed on Colbert was just awful. I believe that's real as well. That was real footage. That was real footage of Joe Biden showing up. Oh. Okay, well, folks, I gotta get going pretty soon. I'm gonna go pick up my kid from school in a couple minutes and get some pizza. That's what I'm doing with my Friday. I hope other people are gonna have some cool Friday plans going. That's what I'm up to. Did you know that I've never seen the thing that Colbert showed? I showed it a couple minutes ago, Johnny, and it's awful. Did you know that the only way that I'm able to put on this show that you will enjoy every single day, kids and pizza. Oh no, not you too, cock sailor. This is outrageous. Anyway, folks, as you know, every single day on here, I'm trying to make this little number at the bottom of the screen go up. It's been a bit of a tough week. It's been a bit of a slog, but I know that it's possible. Only 12 subs to go to get to the goal. What a great way to finish the week strong would be if to get to the old sub goal right now. That would be wonderful, if possible. So once again, if you do enjoy tuning into this show each and every day, if you like being part of the community, whether you're a regular chatter or you're doing more of a cameo kind of routine, or if you're a lurker or someone, even if you just showed up for the first time today, please do subscribe and support the show if you can. Help me make the little number go up. Help me help you. You know, that's what this show is. It's me. I'm trying to speak to you every day and give your life meaning and talk you through whatever's going on, whether it's something personal or whether it's something that affects everyone, something geopolitical.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to
so help
talk
me
you
help
through all
you.
this.
Ayatollah Joe, thank you for the gifted sub. Very cool. I appreciate that. Yes, Anus Beard, I believe you do own the person that you gifted to earlier. I believe you do. And now a mere 11 subs to go. And, you know, can you talk me through the geostrategic stuff that's going on? I'm sure if we watched the rest of that interview with VJ, then Brian Becker would have said geostrategic. There's not a doubt in my mind. Talk about a word that makes you sound smart as soon as you say it. That geostrategic is up there. But in theory, someone could trigger the alert featuring
You can count on
friend
me.
of the
You're
show,
gonna have
VJ
good old
Prashad,
Rob to talk you through all
which
this.
we all know and love. Not only can somebody could do that right now and get the show to the sub goal. What a crazy combination that would be. Low Observable Goat, thank you for the gifted sub as well. Thank you, Low Observable Goat. That's very cool. Only 10 little subs to go. I can't even believe it. Only 10 subs to get to the sub goal. That would be so neat. That would be so neat to finish the week by getting to the sub goal. How neat, Sean, how neat would that be? That would, I think it would be neat. It'd be alright, he says. Jeez. All it would take is the average amount to fill one's gas tank. In Joe Brandon's America, anyway. He doesn't get to the sub goal. Rob may have to allow arms manufacturers to sponsor the program. And I know no one wants that. I know no one wants that. That would compromise the integrity of everything we've built here. Everything that we've spent 4 years building
You can
together.
count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Ayatollah Joe, thanks for another gifted sub. I very much appreciate that. Remember, everyone, little Rob doesn't get pizza or sustenance if Rob doesn't reach the sub goal. Exactly. I just gets home and I just put him in his room. I say, sorry, pal. You know, it's not me. I wanted to have pizza and have a fun movie night. Unfortunately, it was the chat in my community, and they didn't agree. They thought you should just immediately go to bed. So, wish there was something I could do. Chat didn't want you to have pizza. You can have just some gray slop. You can have some gruel. I've prepared some gruel for you instead of pizza. You can shape the gruel into like a triangle shape, like a pizza wedge kind of shape. I provided you with a little mold. You can pour the gruel into this pizza-shaped mold. Please, sir, can I have some more? He loves Oliver Twist, too. He really does. Chan was very specific about going to bed without supper. Why are we talking about child cruelty? Well, I'm trying to psyop people into gifting 9 more subs is basically what I'm doing. That's why. I'm trying to psyop people into supporting this show and making the little number go up into the good number. Rob's kid's gonna have to go busking on the streets of Montreal singing British patriotism songs. They're actually Welsh.
Wow. Okay, Rob. Seriously, wow.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Barbara, one chatter cares about kids' happiness. Barbara, thank you very, very much for 10 gifted subs. That's very, very kind of you. Seriously, thank you. I really, really appreciate that. I really, really do. Thank you, Barbara. Could you get Palantir teal bucks like the Tradcaths? I would love to get Roger Waters bucks. I'd love to get some of that Pink Floyd money supporting this show. That's really my goal, is to get Waters bucks. No worries. Sending my son straight to bed. No pizza tonight. You took the pizza out of your child's mouth to support me, and I appreciate that. You're going to have to interview him. That's a good point. I should try and make that happen. You tried asking Soros. I should try that as well. I'm doing like a sort of, it's like a progressive, what is the show? It's like a liberal progressive thing. We're combating Russian disinformatia. Just tell him Putin bad. It's like a big Putin bad thing. That's okay, Lodane. We'll try to make it happen. Getting John Cusack would be cool as well. John, I've got a few John Cusack retweets. We basically know each other. Man, my mullet is looking crazy right now. Look at that. Jeez. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Thank you for watching this show today and yesterday and every other day as well. I appreciate you all very much.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Ragdigen, thank you for the gifted sub as well. Okay, now it's too much. Now it's enough. That'll be sufficient. I'm getting out of here before you make me sing. I'm getting ready to eat too much pizza now. Stop. Thank you, Red Wizard, as well for gifting a sub. Did that just not have an alert? That's a little strange. But thank you, Red Wizard. I wonder why that is. Thanks again, folks. I'll be around on, I'll be back on Monday. And I'll see you then. It's gonna have to be shorter because I have to bring my son to go to the dentist on Monday, but thanks again, folks. I'll talk to you soon. Give my regards to our friend Adrienne Dixon.